I've been sleeping at home, but my husband isn't here. I feel like he's lying to me. This all started back when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley, and I was expecting our first child after 2 years of marriage. I was 9 months pregnant, with only 1 month to go before my due date. While I was excited about the baby, I was also nervous about childbirth and taking care of a child for the first time. I planned to go back to my parents' house for a while so they could help me. I mentioned this to my husband earlier during my pregnancy, but I thought he'd forgotten, so I brought it up again today. While watching TV lazily, my husband said, "Oh, you mentioned going back to your parents' house. If you're going, just go. I won't have any trouble without you here." I was shocked by his dismissive words, but didn't want to argue, so I let it go. I told him, "I'm going back this weekend. I'll give birth next month and will stay at my parents' for 1 or 2 months. So I'll be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the house is ready for the baby." He replied, "All right, I would have done it anyway." Then he added, "Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work." I was disappointed. I had hoped he'd come with me to the station, but he didn't seem to care. I knew he was a workaholic, working even on weekends, but I wished he would consider how hard it would be for me to travel while being so pregnant and carrying a lot of luggage. I understood he was busy, but I felt lonely. I didn't want our baby to feel this way too. I also started feeling anxious about whether we could raise the child together. It's not just my baby, it's ours. When did he become so cold? With these thoughts in my mind, I started packing. Since I had time before going to my parents, I decided to send most of my luggage ahead using delivery services. Before my maternity leave started, I had cleaned the house from top to bottom, wanting everything to be ready for the baby. I had even set up the baby bed, and was excited about our life as a family of 3. But my husband kept making a mess in the house. He left half-finished drinks lying around, and didn't clean up the packaging from the things he ordered online. It seemed like he still thought he was living alone. Maybe I cleaned too early, but it hurt to see all my effort go to waste. I realized that since we got married, I had never seen my husband cook or clean. Even though I kept tidying up, the house only got messier, and I started worrying about how things would be when I was away. But with the baby due soon, I focused on my upcoming childbirth. The weekend came quickly, and I left for my parents' home. My husband didn't even see me off, as he went to work. While I relaxed at my parents' house, I stayed in touch with him. We exchanged emails every day, and talked on the phone every few days. But over time, he stopped answering my calls more often. When I asked him why, he'd give vague answers like, "Well, yeah," or "Not really." Jokingly, I asked, "You're not cheating on me, are you?" "I've heard men often cheat when their wives are pregnant." He replied irritably, "No, why would I? It's annoying to be doubted." His irritated tone made me uneasy, so I quickly apologized. I didn't want unnecessary worries while carrying our child. I decided to trust him. A few weeks later, my labor pains started. As I prepared to go to the hospital, I called my husband. Even though I was embarrassed to show my pain, I wanted him to be there for the birth. I said, "The labor has started. It usually takes about half a day for the first baby, so you can still make it. I want you there when our child is born, and you can even cut the umbilical cord." To my surprise, my husband sighed and said, "You want me to take the train right now?" "Sorry, I'm tired, and I have work tomorrow." I was shocked. "You're still talking about work? Our child is being born, and you're prioritizing work." He snapped back, "Shut up, there's no one to replace me at work. If I don't do it, it won't get done. Can't you understand that?" I'm hanging up. I tried to convince him to come, but he cut me off. Tears filled my eyes as I endured the labor pains. Feeling alone, how could my husband be so indifferent to the birth of our child? From the moment a mother finds out she's pregnant, her child becomes her priority. But he seemed to feel nothing. I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy after a full day of labor. He was so tiny and precious. My parents showered him with love, and they taught me how to care for him. After a month, I was already used to bathing and taking care of the baby. My parents grew concerned and asked me, Are you really okay with a husband like that? My parents were worried about me after they went back home. I tried to reassure them, saying I was managing well and recovering faster than expected. I thought I might go back home next week. They reminded me not to push myself and to let them know if anything went wrong. They often say that after childbirth, a woman's body feels like it has been in a car accident. But I felt good thanks to the hormones. I was getting used to taking care of my baby, so I decided to return home earlier than planned. While at my parents' house, I had little contact with my husband. Even when I sent him photos and videos of our son, he didn't react much. I thought maybe a father only feels like one when he interacts with the baby. I tried to stay positive. When my parents dropped me off at home, I didn't tell my husband I was coming back. Since it was his day off, I wondered how he would react to seeing our child for the first time, and if he would like our home. After a few hours of driving, we arrived home. I carried my son while my parents handled our luggage. But when I unlocked the door, we were greeted by a dark, silent room. "Hey, no one's here," I said, as I entered the living room. A foul smell hit us. Turning on the light revealed a shocking sight. The room was a mess. Dirty dishes and half-eaten pizza filled the sink. Clothes and trash were everywhere, and mold floated in half-drunk juice. The table was covered in stains, and the bathroom was full of black mold. The toilet was dirty, and in the crib we had prepared for our son, there were cardboard boxes and garbage bags piled up. I had asked my husband to keep things clean for our baby, but it was a disaster. I felt devastated. There was no way we could raise a child in such a filthy home, and I was especially upset about the state of the crib. "This is unacceptable. What's going on?" I exclaimed. My parents were furious and searched for my husband in every room, but he was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Maybe he was working another weekend shift, but I was starting to doubt him. His job didn't require weekend work, and he was supposed to follow the calendar. "Let's try calling him," my parents suggested. We couldn't stand in such a messy house any longer. I stepped outside with my confused parents and called my husband, but he didn't answer. On my third attempt, he finally picked up. "Hey, where are you now?" I asked. "I'm sleeping at home," he replied. "Why at home?" I pressed. We had searched the whole house and hadn't seen him. Was he buried under the mess? His tone didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then, I heard a woman's voice in the background. I couldn't hear her clearly, but it was definitely a woman. In that moment, it hit me, he was cheating on me. I couldn't believe he would do this while neglecting our child. The house was a disaster, and he was being unfaithful. I felt furious. A father like this was unnecessary for our son. If he cared so much for this other woman, he could have her. Suddenly, I thought maybe a burglar had broken in. I needed to report this to the police. "Huh? You at your parents' house?" he asked, confused. My anger boiled over. "You're lying about being at home. It's unacceptable to turn the crib into a dump. I'm not coming back. We're getting a divorce," I said quickly before hanging up. I reported a burglary to the police to punish him. I told my parents and son to go back to my parents' house while I waited for my husband in front of our home. The police arrived before he did. I welcomed them inside like guests. When my husband finally showed up, he had a woman with him. His face showed panic. "You weren't supposed to be back yet," he exclaimed. "Who is she?" I asked, glaring at the woman, who stood with her arms crossed. Despite the situation, I felt strangely calm. I asked the woman questions and learned that my husband had been seeing her while hiding our marriage. I was so disgusted by him that I didn't know how to react. "Let me explain," my husband pleaded, trying to grab my shoulder, but I slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me. It's disgusting. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you're embarrassed by the mess you made. I'm leaving. You can explain everything to the police. Goodbye." I headed back to my parents' house, leaving my husband and his mistress stunned. He called numerous times, but I didn't answer. That night, I finally responded. Apparently, he explained the situation to the police and came home looking troubled. The police must have had a hard time dealing with the awful smell and the mess. He brought this on himself. Now, All he had left was his shame and a ruined home. "Come on, I'm sorry, please come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son," my husband pleaded. If he truly felt sorry, he should have come to my parents' house to apologize in person. Instead, he thought a phone call would fix everything, showing just how terrible he really was. I couldn't imagine a future with him. He had never cared before, and he wasn't there when I gave birth, even after I asked him several times. "Well, I thought you knew I would be there," he said. "I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you." I could hear him getting more desperate on the other end of the line, but no matter how much he begged, I wasn't changing my mind. "You should have kept that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you. It was just a fling. You're the only one for me, Ashley," he insisted. "A fling? You saw her every time you said you had to work overtime." "Well, that's a different story," he mumbled, and eventually confessed he had cheated on me with multiple women from high school after reconnecting at a friend's wedding. He was a scumbag. There was no point in continuing the conversation. I felt chills as I listened to him desperately apologize, nearly in tears. "I can't believe this. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands?" "I won't do it again. I'll come pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together." I couldn't believe his audacity. "I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own. Please forgive me, Ashley." I hung up before he could finish, the call ending with a hollow silence. That was the end of our short marriage. Half a year has passed since then. I decided to start working and relied on my parents for support. Once I save enough money, I plan to leave their house and live on my own with my son. I am currently negotiating the divorce with my husband, mostly to secure alimony. He seems unable to manage household chores and eats out most of the time, leaving his house a mess, but that's no longer my concern. I'm focused on giving my son all the love I can.
"I'm divorcing you because I got an employee pregnant, and I'm going to give her the position of being the company president's wife," my husband Dylan said, without a hint of guilt, thrusting the divorce papers in front of me. "Are you serious? She's only 23, right?" I might have felt a bit of affection for my husband of 30 years, Dylan. But he trampled over my feelings with ease. "Are you joking? Unlike you, a housewife, I'm the president of a company." His usual attitude dried up any love I had for him completely. And my heart, now empty, filled with hatred. "Okay, I understand." And with that, our 30 years of marriage came to an end. He really doesn't understand anything, does he? He's so impulsive. Saying I wouldn't care if he regretted anything that happened afterward, I signed the divorce papers. Then, 2 weeks after the divorce, I kept quiet, but that girl you got pregnant. "What?" Dylan, who had a lavish wedding ceremony abroad, was about to learn a terrible truth. "My name is Abby. I am 56 years old, the same age as my husband, Dylan, who runs a company." Dylan and I met at a party. Coming from the countryside, all my classmates were either married or had children already. I wasn't exactly in a rush, but seeing my close friends' families, I yearned for a family of my own. Especially since I was raised by my grandparents after my parents died when I was young. To be honest, I wasn't very close to my grandparents. Probably because my father had eloped with their only daughter, my mom. So, I always dreamed of building a bright and happy family of my own. And then, by chance, I met him at a party. Having grown up in a single-parent family, I can understand your feelings to some extent. By the way, I'm thinking of starting a company and would like to do it with you, Abby. Would you date me? I think we could make it work together, with someone as intelligent and goal-oriented as you. His sincere words attracted me, and we started dating. That's when my fate began to spiral out of control. We dated with the intention of marrying, and eventually got married at the age of 26. 30 years have passed since then, just the two of us. We don't have children, because we were not blessed with any. We married at a good age, and started preconception care when we were both 30, after the conversation about establishing his company had settled. But it didn't work out. He seems to believe that the reason for not getting pregnant always lies with the woman. The first half year felt normal, but as time passed, 1 year, 2 years, his attitude worsened.
There must be something wrong with you for not being able to get pregnant. Go get yourself checked out. I know a guy who runs a gynecology clinic. Go to him,
he said. I really didn't want to. He made it sound simple, but gynecology is a very delicate field. I would have been slightly okay if the doctor was a stranger, but the idea of going to someone he knew made me uncomfortable. I said I'd prefer to see my regular doctor, and he frowned and started complaining.
Does that mean you don't trust my acquaintance? It's not that. I didn't say that. It's just that my regular doctor knows my body better. Fine, do whatever you want. But don't expect me to deal with whatever happens later.
Angry, he left somewhere. Despite upsetting him, I strongly felt that I should be able to choose my own doctor and proceeded as planned. The result was that there was nothing wrong with me. But to know for sure whether it was infertility, he needed to be tested too, which I suggested. Yet, this only made him more upset.
There's no way I'm infertile. What an irresponsible thing for a doctor to say. This is exactly the problem. If we had gone to my acquaintance from the start, none of this would have happened. But it's too late now. I've decided that the failure of the preconception care is your fault, so deal with it yourself.
This was how the issue of preconception care remained unresolved, and we just dragged it along until we were over 40. I was open to the idea of having children if I could get pregnant, but it seemed Dylan wasn't. He seemed to think it was embarrassing to get pregnant after 40, and from that time on, we lived together as a couple but as if we were complete strangers to each other. Still, as a company owner, he needed a successor. So, we decided to adopt a child with no relatives and welcome him as our own. Our son's name is Eric. He grew up to be honest, kind, and principled. He is now 21 years old. He is attending university while being groomed as the successor to Dylan's company. Now that I'm 56, I started to think seriously about the future, when a shocking incident occurred.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Brenda. The president always takes such good care of me. She greeted me in a drawn-out manner, a new employee at Dylan's company. Her appearance added another worry to my list. My first impression of Brenda was that she was a beauty who would fit right into the glamorous world. She had sharp features, a good figure, and seemed to be about 5 feet 5 inches tall. She had worked as a model while in college, I heard. She's not modeling now since she joined Dylan's company as a new employee, but she still has an unmistakable aura. The reason she came to greet me was that she moved into the house next door. The apartment next to ours is rented entirely as company housing, primarily for single employees. Brenda, living alone, preferred it for its cheaper rent compared to regular apartments. Everyone knows that the company president's house is next to the company housing. So at first, I thought Brenda had simply come over to greet us. But, unexpectedly, she made a shocking statement.
Just between us, I think the president really likes me. During my interview, he complimented my looks a lot, and I come from a pretty good university.
Oh, were you a high school graduate? Sorry about that. Her words clearly looked down on me, making me tremble with anger.
Education is just a part of the process to me. If it doesn't lead to results, it doesn't mean much. That's how I see it.
sparks flew between me and Brenda. I've always been competitive and can't help responding to unpleasant comments. In elementary school, I was often teased by classmates for being raised by my grandparents. I didn't want to drag that bitter feeling forever, so I made sure to express my dislike clearly. Brenda, perhaps not expecting me to retort, was momentarily taken aback. However, an unexpected ally appeared.
"Oh, isn't that Brenda? How's work? Getting used to it?"
It was Dylan. Of course, he wasn't on my side but supported Brenda, whom he favored.
"Abby, stop being so childish. Isn't it embarrassing for the wife of the president? This is why I don't want to introduce you in front of everyone. Don't make me ashamed any more than this, okay?"
Yeah, I got it. He has always been like this. Always putting me down and never once standing by my side. The reason I still live with him is because of Eric. He is a junior in college, and he has a little over a year left. But once he enters society, I've thought it might be time to end things with him. That means I only need to endure for less than 2 more years. And so, I continued this false marriage with him. However, the arrival of this new employee, Brenda, would unexpectedly derail my plans. Not long after Brenda moved into the company housing, I discovered something significant.
Ugh, Dylan, do you really like me that much? Of course, I prefer a young girl like you over an old hag any day. You're so cute and I love you.
That day, Dylan had said he couldn't come home because of an important business deal. So, I decided to eat out alone. Being by myself for the first time in a while, I thought I'd enjoy a drink. While walking through the urban hub, I witnessed Brenda and Dylan walking arm in arm. And I was speechless when I saw the building they entered. Dylan was definitely having an affair with Brenda. Since then, I've been quietly making certain moves, of course, without letting them realize it. Months later, Dylan said with a creepy smile, "I got an employee pregnant, so I'm divorcing you.
The position of being the company president's wife will go to her."
The employee, that girl he referred to, was undoubtedly Brenda. I understood instantly. I just glared at him in silence. Then, without showing any remorse, he thrust the divorce papers in front of me.
"Are you serious? She's only 23, right? Plus, a new employee getting pregnant by the president and taking over as his wife is unheard of. None of that matters. Do you seriously think you can take responsibility for her life?"
After 30 years together, I guess I did have some affection for him. That's why I said it as a warning, but Dylan didn't think at all and started complaining to me.
"Are you kidding me? I'm the president of the company. As long as I'm here, Brenda won't be threatened, and I can provide for her. You, a non-productive housewife, should worry about being divorced and left by your husband."
His usual attitude finally made me feel that my love for Dylan had completely dried up. And my heart, now empty, filled with hatred. "Yeah, sure. If you say so, I won't stop you.
But just don't regret it,"
I said as a final warning, but it didn't seem to resonate with Dylan.
"Regret? I won't. Unlike you, a housewife with no real career, I've been winning from the start. Now go on, live as a lonely woman divorced at 56.
Thus, a period was put on our 30 years of marriage. Men have no prohibition period for remarriage, so once divorced, they can marry someone else immediately. Dylan, having received the divorce papers I signed, submitted them along with Brenda's marriage registration, probably confusing the city hall staff. But that aside, it seemed divorcing me and marrying Brenda was a foregone conclusion, and they soon flew abroad. Their purpose was a wedding ceremony. Perhaps they couldn't invite employees to a wedding stemming from an affair, but they still had a grand ceremony with a small number of guests. I wonder how much they spent. After their wedding overseas, they enjoyed their honeymoon and returned home after about 2 weeks. After the divorce, Dylan moved out, perhaps buying a condominium somewhere, and now lives there with Brenda. However, when he returned for something he forgot, I greeted him with a thin smile and said, "Did you check your credit card statement properly?" Startled by my sudden question, he looked visibly uncomfortable. But his expression fell with my next words. I kept quiet, but that girl. What? Seems she's hooked on a guy from the nightclub. Huh? Wait, what are you talking about all of a sudden? Nightclub? That can't be, she's a pure maiden. Seeing him say such things gave me chills. However, the fact that Brenda was into nightclubbing remained unchanged, no matter what anyone said. As he looked incredulous, I placed a photo in front of him. And just like that, he let out a silent scream. Thought cheating and divorcing was the end? Thought a housewife like me wouldn't know anything, so wouldn't claim compensation in a divorce court? Haha, how funny. Unfortunately, I had been preparing all along to get back at you both, with enough care to have such photos ready. Dylan, with trembling hands, somehow lifted the photo and scrutinized it. This blonde guy is from the nightclub? Yes, that's right. It's from one of the highest-rated places in the urban hub, apparently. Brenda has the means to treat these men? Based on the empty bottles nearby, I'd estimate she spent well over $10,000. $10,000? There's no way she has that kind of spare cash. Repeating my words, Dylan buried his face in his hands. Then, as if coming to his senses, he started checking his credit card statement on his smartphone. His face grew increasingly pale. As I thought, Brenda had been using Dylan's credit card to lavish money on men. For her, it was a way to get pampered by men without spending her own money. There couldn't be a more convenient ATM than that. Yes, he was completely duped by her. Realizing this, he looked up at me and asked, "Can I claim this as unauthorized use with a credit card company?" There's no way. She's not a minor but a full-grown 23-year-old. Plus, she's your spouse. It's not like she stole the card, you gave her the freedom to use it, right? As I said this, Dylan continued with an agonized expression. I gave it to her for household expenses, thinking she'd use a few $1,000s at most, maybe up to $100,000. But to spend it on men? That's inconceivable, what's going on? He was lamenting, but it was his own fault. He failed to see her true nature and gave her a credit card with a limit that exceeded $10,000. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. Hours later, I received a call from Brenda. Hey, were you secretly digging into my affairs? I got back and Dylan showed me the photo and accused me. Unbelievable. Seriously, stop it with your ugly, old jealousy. The photo I showed him earlier was brought back by him and used to confront her. Seems like she got a good scolding, revealing a side of her that's far from the usual charming facade. I almost burst into laughter. Dylan was one thing, but she was another story. Being cheated on and having my husband stolen justifies this, doesn't it? The affair is a fact, but without objective evidence, you might have denied it. So, I asked a detective to provide indisputable evidence of the affair, whether it's photos or audio. I responded calmly. She seemed to be grinding her teeth on the other end of the line. After a few seconds of silence, she huffed and said, "Then fine. This is defamation, so I'm going to sue you." Huh? I let out an incredulous laugh. Did she really understand the meaning of defamation when she said that? In this case, Brenda and Dylan, who ended a 30-year marriage due to an affair, are on the offending side. If anyone were to sue, it would be me, the victim. I was astounded by Brenda's misunderstanding. But her misconceptions didn't stop. I have Dylan, the ultimate ATM. A little cry, and he's immediately back on my side, and you're nothing. Just wait until the day you're the one crying. With that, she hung up abruptly. Naturally, Brenda ended up being the one to suffer later on. A few days after I exposed Brenda's true nature to Dylan, Brenda came to me begging for forgiveness.
About the compensation in the divorce, if I'm sued, I'll pay, so could you tell Dylan? Suing a 23-year-old for marital fraud seems a bit much.
The turn of events was as I expected, and I couldn't help but laugh. Brenda frowned for a moment but, realizing her current predicament, could only glare at me resentfully. Dylan, being a company president, had connections with lawyers. That's probably why you asked. So, he inquired whether he could sue her for marital fraud. Brenda had clearly stated she viewed him as an ATM, showing no love. And regarding the pregnancy, if it turned out not to be his child, the outcome was clear. Despite her bravado, when faced with the possibility of being sued, she was powerless. That's why she came to me for help. Ironically, I was the only one who could stop Dylan in this situation.
Unfortunately, I am human too, and I have feelings about the way you two treated me. Paying money isn't going to settle everything, you know? You knew he was married and yet engaged in an affair, and even got pregnant. Can you understand the mental anguish I experienced when I found out?
Without a single laugh and speaking rapidly, I told Brenda, who seemed to shrink away in fear. She had no words to return. Let me be clear, I have no intention of forgiving Brenda or Dylan. I thought it was about time to settle this. I had been somewhat considerate because Brenda was pregnant, but it seems that's no longer necessary. I had made up my mind.
Let's handle the future through lawyers, shall we? I don't plan to drag this on forever. Be prepared.
With a glare, Brenda let out a small scream and ran away. If her feelings were so weak that she'd flee from harsh words, she shouldn't have started this in the first place. But once something has happened, there's no undoing it. A few days later, Dylan came to my house. He had a smile plastered on his face, as if it were glued on, pleading for a reconstruction of our relationship. The audacity was astounding. Thinking so, I quickly dispelled his hopes.
Now you want to start over? What kind of nerve do you have? Besides, I told you, didn't I? Can you take responsibility for her life after getting your 23-year-old girlfriend pregnant? I never imagined she would be such a deceitful woman. Using my credit card to lavish gifts on men, buying luxury goods at will. Because of her, I lost about $50,000 from my savings.
That was good information. I smirked and said,
That's our joint savings, right? I'll remind you, we need to split the amount from the time we divorced. I believe we had about $200,000 saved up as a married couple, right? I'll be taking $100,000 as my share of the marital assets. Unfortunately, since Brenda spent your share, all that's left for you is $50,000.
At that, Dylan began to get angry. He argued that the money Brenda spent was an ineffective force, so we should divide the assets at $150,000. His self-centered argument finally brought me to my limit of patience. If he was the one cheated on, maybe he could make such a claim, but since his affair partner wasted the marital savings on other men, he had no right to say anything. And he was forgetting one more crucial thing, which I decided to remind him of.
I checked with the lawyer, and dividing the $200,000 at the time of our divorce for the property division is a done deal. Plus,
Dylan, you should be prepared. You're getting removed from the company's top position. What? No, divorce and the company have nothing to do with each other. The company is mine, I built it. The property division shouldn't.
He was cut off when the living room door opened, and the person standing there made Dylan freeze. It was Eric.
Dad, I'm disappointed. To think you'd rather not pay off your mistress' splurges with your own savings, so you dip into the company's funds.
At that moment, his demeanor completely changed. Until then, he might have appeared somewhat confident, perhaps thinking he could talk his way out of it with me. But with Eric's arrival and his statement, Dylan found himself in a tight spot. Now, as he pointed out, Dylan had been tampering with the company's funds. It's not a cute amount like a few $1,000. Not just a few $1,000s, but over $100,000 had been embezzled.
Dad, you know I've been studying economics and business at university while working in accounting at your company, right? When I noticed something was off and conducted an internal investigation, it turned out Dad was embezzling company money,
he stated, presenting irrefutable evidence. Realizing escape was futile, Dylan, like Brenda before him, pleaded repeatedly for forgiveness.
I was wrong. I admit it. So, Eric, can't you overlook it? I'm your dad. Abby, we were married for 30 years. Be a bit kinder to me. Please.
Such a shallow apology was unnecessary. Neither my nor Eric's feelings had changed at all. The executives had already agreed that someone like him could not be entrusted with the company. By the time Dylan realized it, it was too late, and all he could do was cry and apologize. Then, someone barged in. It was obvious who it was: Brenda.
So you were here. Since the man thing came out, you haven't come home, and you've been avoiding me at work. Fine, I'm divorcing Dylan. The child is definitely yours, so you'll be paying alimony and compensation in the divorce.
Facing her red-faced anger, it wasn't me or Dylan who responded, but Eric.
Brenda, do you understand why I became Mom and Dad's adopted son? Huh? Because this old lady is infertile. Mom is not infertile. The one who is infertile is Dad.
At that moment, the atmosphere froze. After starting infertility treatments, we couldn't get cooperation from him. He might be infertile. But without his cooperation for the tests, there was nothing we could do. I had given up then, but now I couldn't shake off my suspicion. Brenda was 23, and I was in my early 30s when we started the treatments. Though there's a difference, fertility rates don't change much until about 35. So when I learned Brenda was pregnant, I decided to visit someone. That someone was the gynecologist Dylan had initially recommended. I was really conflicted about going, but I thought maybe they knew something and sought help. That's when I found out the shocking truth. I wasn't infertile, but Dylan was. Apparently, he has no ability to impregnate anyone. Before dating me, his ex-girlfriend told him to get tested reluctantly. Knowing his pride and their acquaintance, the doctor didn't tell the truth and said there were no issues. When visiting the doctor, a friend worried about me insisted on coming along, but I never imagined finding out such a fact.
As a doctor, not disclosing the actual test results wasn't right. But blaming him now doesn't change anything. The fact remains, you are infertile. So, Brenda, how exactly did you conceive his child?
Brenda started to falter. If she truly believed Dylan was the father, she could have outright denied my claims. Her inability to do so probably meant something. Dylan, more upset by Brenda piling on lies than the revelation of his infertility, began to berate her fiercely. Seeing them about to start an ugly argument, I intervened.
Brenda initially approached you to use you, That's an undeniable fact. I understand your anger, but you cheated on me first. That's also a fact. Before you two start a nasty fight, isn't there something you should say to me?
With a glare, Dylan shut his mouth. Then Brenda said,
I'm sorry. I never thought it would come to this.
Oh? So you destroyed a family with that mindset?
She could only cry and keep apologizing. I couldn't bear to watch. Exchanging a nod with Eric, I presented them with the documents for the compensation claim in the divorce court. Seeing it, Dylan's voice cracked.
Hey! What's with this amount? It's ridiculous. Divorce settlements for cheating are supposed to be around $30,000 at most, right? What is this amount?
The amount I demanded was $100,000. It's understandable to be shocked by the high figure, but there's a valid reason for it. For the past 10 years, Dylan, despite being in a superior position as the company's president, had not given me, a housewife, any living expenses. I managed because I had about $100,000 inherited from my parents. I used it for living expenses and Eric's education, so frankly, my personal savings were zero. Inheritance isn't subject to division, yet I had to use it because Dylan didn't provide living expenses. It was a force majeure. And the final straw was the affair. The higher the social status of the party involved, the higher the compensation in a divorce court due to responsibility, as explained by the lawyer. I went through all past cases, searching for someone in a similar situation as me. I found cases where individuals won over $100,000 in the past. The amount my lawyer and I proposed wasn't just arbitrarily high, it was calculated based on Dylan's conduct over the past 10 years, his position as a president, his ability to pay, and his behavior after the affair was revealed. In other words, it was justified. If they had complaints, they were prepared to make them pay this amount even if it meant going to court.
Not providing living expenses to your housewife, and making me pay for that and the education fees from my inherited money, knowing well enough that you weren't giving any. No remorse from you, and Brenda even threatened to sue for defamation. You two fulfill the conditions for a high compensation in divorce court.
Then Brenda desperately clung to a pathetic plea.
Please wait. I'm reflecting now. So
what? Expecting leniency or a reduction? Such a change of heart. I was beyond angry. I was astounded. With a heavy sigh, I glared at her and said,
Now you're desperate and want forgiveness? A reduction? Or perhaps, to be overlooked? Such naive thoughts won't work.
Eventually, Brenda became speechless, just biting her lip and looking at me. Turning to Dylan, he let out a small shriek. Then, he started saying the unimaginable.
I was, like Abby, deceived by her. Yes, I'm a victim too. So, let's fight this together. Huh?
The thought of abandoning her to lighten his financial burden in the divorce settlement. He must be aiming for that by reconciling with me. To think such a shallow man was my husband embarrassed me.
Both of you are pathetic. If you cheat, take responsibility till the end. That's what adults do. You're not children who've just learned to talk.
Eric joined in the argument.
This is the worst. I no longer see you as my dad. My only parent is Mom. Brenda, if you're here just to cheat, you might as well leave.
Said and done, the two were unable to retort and just collapsed on the spot. After involving our lawyers in discussions, we settled on $70,000. Initially, my lawyer had said that getting $40,000 to $50,000 would be good. But I couldn't forgive his actions, so I insisted on $100,000.
even if reduced, I was confident of securing about $50,000. The final conclusion was that Dylan's affair, without providing living expenses or paying for our child's education, was egregious. And this was determined in court. As a result, Dylan and Brenda were ordered to pay $70,000. Dylan was arrested for embezzling company funds, receiving a suspended sentence. With a suspended sentence, he avoided prison but fell into a debt hell, hitting rock bottom. Of course, he ended with Brenda. She tried to find the father among dozens of candidates but eventually gave up. The child was placed in a facility, arguably better off than being raised by her. Brenda resigned and, after being employed elsewhere for a low wage, also took up night jobs to continue paying the divorce compensation to me. Dylan was ousted from the company, unable to find employment due to spreading rumors, now juggling part-time jobs. They had to let go of the condominium they lived in and now likely reside in an old, drafty apartment. The executive director took over as the new president, with plans to pass it on to Eric when ready. The company took a significant hit but is now moving forward united. I got money and the house in the property division but sold the house to live in a smaller apartment, finding it more peaceful. This is somehow more calming. Eric graduated from university successfully and is respected in the company. After a tumultuous decade and divorce process, I now look forward to a peaceful retirement. Enjoying the straight and honest young man he has become, unlike his irresponsible father.
From Bonnie to Brandy, a delivery. I wonder why Bonnie would go out of her way to send me a gift. What's the wind bringing now?
Tentatively opening the envelope, it contained something like fabric, and upon unfolding, it turned out to be an apron. But I've never worn an apron like that, and at first glance said,
"Sending something like this for a gift is definitely odd."
My daughter Jeanette, with a pale face, said hurriedly,
"Mom, let's just throw this away quickly."
In the afternoon, my eldest son Smith came visiting, holding a parcel in his hands. "Mom, it's Mother's Day today, isn't it? Sorry, I haven't done anything for you till now. Here, a present. What's wrong? Something bothering you?" Smith, sensing the somber mood between me and Jeanette, asked.
"Actually, before you came here, she received a gift from Bonnie."
That's right, she had been looking through an apron catalog for a while.
"Yes. Bonnie bought that apron and sent it to Mom. That's great, isn't it? So, show me what the apron looks like."
Smith was excited, unaware of the situation. As I struggled to respond, Jeanette glanced towards the trash can.
"What? What's in the trash can?"
Seeing inside the trash can, Smith's demeanor changed.
"What is this? Bonnie took the trouble to pick this out. Apologize to Bonnie."
Can you still say the same after seeing this? Can you blame her? Jeanette carefully lifted the apron from the trash and spread it out wide. The moment Smith faced the unexpected reality, his expression froze.
"What is this? It can't be."
My name is Brandy, 56 years old. A very ordinary housewife blessed with 2 children, but soon after my eldest son entered middle school, his father passed away due to illness. Fortunately, we had life insurance, which provided enough payment to support the children, and our life was stable. Although financially we were not inconvenienced, raising 2 children was not easy. Especially my eldest son, Smith, who always talked big but never stuck with anything, and would give up at the slightest obstacle, a troubling character. In high school, after hearing in a special class about how becoming a civil servant meant a secure life, Smith came home and declared,
"I'll become a civil servant."
But upon realizing his academic performance and the reality of the highly difficult civil service exam, his spirit broke.
I never really thought you could become a civil servant.
I laughed it off, but Smith never mentioned his goals again.
Well, just study adequately, get into a university with a name, and join a company with a stable salary.
His big dreams gradually turned into smaller goals, and eventually, he managed to get a sales job at a small company.
Living a stable life isn't so bad.
I quietly continued to watch over Smith. Meanwhile, Jeanette, my younger daughter, was always a good student, excelling in her studies and always at the top of her class. A well-behaved child who took the initiative to do everything from cleaning, laundry, cooking, to washing dishes, she was easy to raise. Jeanette, who always achieved her stated goals, declared during high school career counseling,
"I want to work at a major cosmetics manufacturer."
Following that, she self-studied everything from cosmetics knowledge to business manners and successfully landed a job at her dream cosmetics manufacturer. With both children moving out for their jobs, I now live alone. Not hearing the children's lively laughter or their arguments suddenly made me feel lonely. The only joy in my life now is the occasional phone calls from my children. One day, Smith called, sounding quite formal.
"Actually, there's a woman I'd like to introduce to you, Mom,"
he said, sounding confused. When someone mentions introducing a woman, even the least perceptive person can guess it's a fiancé. Thinking about it, Smith is in his mid-20s. About the same age my husband and I got married, so it's not surprising he has someone he's thinking of marrying. Honestly, while I was surprised, I also felt a loneliness at the thought of my son being taken away by someone else, but I knew a mother has no right to hold back her adult son. Coming home for the weekend after a while, Smith brought a young woman by his side. "I'd like to introduce you. This is Bonnie. She works at a major apparel company."
"Nice to meet you, Brandy. I'm Bonnie. Pleasure to meet you."
The woman who introduced herself as Bonnie didn't have the flashy makeup common these days, but bowed with a low posture, leaving a refreshing and pleasant impression. Maybe because Smith chose her, my internal criteria for judgment was a bit softer than usual. Even when we sat down on the living room sofa, and I was about to serve tea, she hurriedly stood up.
"Brandy, let me do that."
"It's okay, you're a guest today, so please take it easy." Her well-mannered appearance boosted my impression of her significantly. Her smiling face with cute dimples contributed to a warm and fuzzy aura.
"I see, so this is what got you hooked. Eh? What was that? Mom, did you say something?" "No, I didn't say anything at all."
I laughed it off.
"More importantly, I'm curious about how you two met."
When I asked with interest, Smith shyly admitted, "Actually, we only met at a mixer 2 weeks ago." Hearing this, I was so shocked I almost lost my footing.
"Engaged after just 2 weeks of meeting? Isn't that a bit too fast?"
Do you think? I don't think it's too fast. Speed is normal these days, and I often hear about people getting married without dating at all. That might be true, but as a mother, I couldn't help but feel anxious. When Bonnie went to the restroom, I asked Smith,
"I'll trust your choice since you picked her, but are you really sure about this? Are you prepared?" "Of course I am." "Mom, do you still not trust Bonnie?"
I shook my head.
"It's not about trust. Regardless of trust, I think getting engaged after only 2 weeks is too quick."
Smith laughed off my concern. "Mom, I've heard that you had almost no courtship period before getting married after your matchmaking." An old story was brought up, reviving sweet and sour memories of my youth, but I coughed and brushed those memories aside.
Still, back then, both our parents knew each other well, and the matchmaker was someone trustworthy. Your situation is not the same.
Is that so? Well, regardless, the fact that Bonnie and I are getting married is unchangeable, and my feelings won't change even if you don't approve.
Smith looked at me with a determined glare.
I'm not going to fuss over your marriage to her. I trust you, so if you've decided on her, go ahead. Thank you. I knew you would understand, Mom,
Smith said, his eyes shining.
Well, Bonnie seems like a sincere woman, and I'll accept the engagement, but how about dating for about a year first? To understand what kind of person the other is before making any decisions. To avoid regrets later.
I meant it as advice out of concern, but Smith seemed not to take it well.
You might have just met Bonnie today, but I've been with her for 2 weeks and feel I understand her well enough. I can't wait a year.
Smith's resolve seemed unbreakable. When Bonnie returned from the restroom.
Anyway, we will definitely build a wonderful family, so please watch over us warmly.
Saying this, the young couple left my home, and 2 months later, they had their wedding. A few days after that, I received a call from Smith informing me that Bonnie had quit her job to become a housewife.
That's how it's going to be, so, see ya. Wait a minute. Are you sure that's okay? Bonnie quitting her job is also for me. She says it's better for raising children. And you know, Mom, you want to see your grandchildren soon, right?
This is also for you. It felt like I was being smoothly convinced. The swift developments left me feeling a bit left behind.
Smith, you rushed into marriage, but are you really okay with that woman, Bonnie?
Jeanette expressed her worries over the phone, but I responded with a wry smile.
What's done is done. All we can do now is watch over them warmly. That's true.
Both Jeanette and I had our reservations, but we reluctantly agreed. Time flies, and it's already been 4 years since Smith and Bonnie got married. Yet, I haven't heard any news about them having children. I was told Bonnie quit her job to focus on starting and raising a family, but with no signs of that happening, I couldn't shake off my uneasy feelings. However, this is something that's bestowed by heaven, so fretting over it won't change the situation. Thinking it would only add psychological pressure on them, I consciously avoided bringing up the topic of children in front of Smith and Bonnie. Smith and Bonnie would visit during their substantial holidays, but beyond that, we hardly had any interaction. Still, I had no particular complaints as Bonnie always played the role of a good daughter-in-law in front of me. She seemed to manage household chores quite well, and there was nothing for me to nag about. However, at a family gathering, I heard some unsettling rumors about Bonnie.
I went to greet Smith at his home the other day, and it seemed like they were living in quite strange circumstances. Really? I haven't heard anything like that.
It was unexpected news to me. I had never heard from Smith himself about any troubles at work. But it's entirely possible he chose not to talk about the real situation to avoid worrying anyone, thinking it would be cruel to pry.
I leave Smith to manage his own affairs, so I don't think I should interfere.
But then, making sure no one else was around, a relative whispered,
The problem isn't Smith, it's his wife, Bonnie. She's apparently addicted to online shopping, spending most of the income Smith earns.
No way! I instantly dismissed the relative's claim. I had only met Bonnie a few times, but she seemed serious and responsible, not the type to indulge in luxury to the point of bankruptcy.
It's not just me. Other relatives and acquaintances have all said the same. They don't trust her.
The relative's earnest expression made the shadow of worry in my mind grow. When I later mentioned it to Jeanette, she wasn't surprised at all.
I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily, Mom, but I've heard those rumors too.
Suddenly feeling dizzy, I lost my balance.
Hey, are you okay, Mom?
Thank goodness Jeanette was there,
but my heart sank into darkness. Anyway, I don't trust that woman, Bonnie. We need to have a serious talk with her soon. I stopped Jeanette. Could you leave this to me? I'll talk to Bonnie directly and find out what's really going on. Do you want me to come with you? Jeanette looked worriedly at me. I'm fine. Despite appearances, I've successfully raised 2 children on my own. That's true, but I'm still worried. What if that woman, Bonnie, says something hurtful to you? Indeed, my distrust towards Bonnie was growing. But Jeanette's kind words inspired me, giving me a sense of courage. If Bonnie says or does something awful, you'll let me know right away, okay? Later, I stepped into the apartment where Smith and Bonnie lived for the first time. I had suggested visiting several times before, but each time Smith would say, "I'm busy with work, and Bonnie thinks it would be awkward to be alone with you." Given such responses, I hesitated to visit. As a mother, I was naturally concerned about whether my son was truly happy. But this time was different. Regardless of what Smith said, I had to verify Bonnie's true character for myself. When I rang the doorbell, Bonnie answered with a surprised look. "What's the matter?" "Brandy, if you were coming, you should have told me in advance," she said in a fluster, but properly prepared slippers and led me to the living room. Watching her serve coffee to a guest, as a housewife, made me momentarily forget the rumors about her splurging on shopping. "Smith is at work right now." "I know. I came to talk to you today." A look of caution appeared on Bonnie's face. I was sure she knew what this was about. "I've heard from others that you're addicted to online shopping." Then Bonnie, obviously irritated, TCH, made a strange noise, audible to me. "So what? It's my money. I can spend it however I want, can't I?" she defiantly stated. This was her true nature. I felt a fear as if my heart was being squeezed. "So, is it true? Are you really living beyond your means and struggling?" Bonnie sighed deeply. "This is our issue. It's not something for you to worry about, so please leave." She stood up, frowning, and tried to usher me out. But I couldn't just back down and leave quietly. "You said it's your money, but isn't Smith the only breadwinner now? You've quit your job, so can you really say that?" Bonnie, with her long black hair, frantically ran her hands through it. "It's all for having and raising children. I'm trying to give you a grandchild. That's why I decided not to work. But it's not going as planned, so of course, I get stressed every day. What's wrong with a little shopping? Do you, an outsider, have the right to stop me?" She laid out a one-sided and selfish argument. "That's a different matter." I tried to counter calmly, but even that seemed to annoy Bonnie. "How dare you meddle in our private life? Get out!" She almost threw something at me, spitting words with fierce anger, leaving me no choice but to flee. It appeared Bonnie disliked anyone interfering in her affairs to an extreme degree. Convinced of this, I decided to reconsider my approach to Bonnie in the future. The second Sunday of May arrived. This day is Mother's Day, a special day when children across the country express their appreciation and thanks to their mothers. Every year around this time, I feel restless and uneasy. Returning from shopping, I saw Jeanette's car pulling into the garage. "I just got back, perfect timing." Jeanette got out of the car and from the back seat, she took out a bright red carnation bouquet. "Thank you for everything, Mom. Please stay healthy and live a long life." Hey, I'm still in my 50s. Isn't it too early to be concerned about living a long life? I said, trying to play it off, and Jeanette laughed. "My apologies, how rude of me." She bowed deeply in an exaggerated manner and apologized. Did you keep tonight free? I've booked us a reservation at a new restaurant.
Thank you. I'm always causing you trouble. It was a given that she would take me out for dinner each year, so I had already cleared my schedule in anticipation. I usually avoid luxury, but I allow myself to indulge in my daughter's kindness on this day. Then, a delivery truck turned into our narrow residential street. Considering it was Mother's Day, I figured the delivery service must be busy, but then the truck stopped in front of our house.
It looks like it's for me. Who could it be from?
I tried to think of anyone besides Jeanette who might send me a gift, but couldn't come up with anyone. The driver took a package wrapped in an envelope from the truck and approached us. After confirming our names and address, he said,
"This is a delivery from Bonnie to Brandy."
Jeanette and I looked at each other in surprise. Holding the package, we stood dumbfounded at the entrance for a while.
That Bonnie would send me a present for Mother's Day. What kind of turn of events is this?
As we watched with caution, Jeanette also seemed suspicious.
Be careful, Mom. There must be some catch to this. It's scary.
She frowned deeply. Tentatively opening the envelope, it contained something like fabric, which unfolded to be an apron. However, I never actually wore the apron. The moment I saw it, I remarked,
"Sending something like this, that woman must be out of her mind."
Jeanette, with a pale face, said,
"What is she thinking? Just throw it away quickly."
Even though it was sent by my son's wife, I felt no guilt about discarding it. In fact, neither Jeanette nor I could think of any option other than throwing it away. In the afternoon, Smith came by, holding a parcel.
"Mom, it's Mother's Day today. I haven't done much for you until now, sorry. Here, a present."
Before Smith could hand me the parcel, Jeanette snatched it from him.
"Let me see it first."
"I'll check what's inside."
"What are you doing?" "It's an expensive watch I bought from Tiffany's. Handle it with care."
Smith was indignant at Jeanette's rough handling of the parcel. Jeanette opened the box and checked inside, but nothing seemed amiss.
"All right, it's fine. Here, Mom, a present from Smith."
"Thank you. I'm relieved it's something decent." "What's with that reaction? I thought you'd be happier." Smith was noticeably angry and disappointed, expecting a more joyful response. "It's just that we were suspicious because you rarely bring gifts." "Don't be misleading. What's that supposed to mean?"
"I just wanted to start building a respectable family now that I'm married too. I thought I shouldn't forget to thank Mom, that's all."
I forced a smile I had forgotten.
"Thank you. I am really happy about this. What's wrong? Did something bad happen?"
Smith sensed the somber mood between me and Jeanette and asked, "Actually, before you came here, we received a present from Bonnie too." I hesitated to finish my sentence.
"Eh? I didn't hear anything about that. Now that you mention it, she was looking at an apron catalog."
"Yes.
Bonnie bought that apron and sent it to Mom." "That's great, then. She cares about you too. So, what does the apron look like? Show me."
Unaware of everything, Smith's eyes sparkled with excitement, but Jeanette grimly glanced at the trash can instead.
"Eh? What's in the trash can?"
Smith walked towards the trash can. Seeing what was inside changed Smith's expression dramatically.
"What's this? What does this mean? Don't tell me this apron was sent by Bonnie for you, Mom. It's cruel to throw away something Bonnie carefully chose. Poor Bonnie. Apologize to her."
As Smith attempted to retrieve it from the trash can, Jeanette warned,
"Be careful. Smith, don't hurt yourself."
Her tone was sharp,
yet it carried Jeanette's concern for Smith. Smith's movements halted upon touching the apron.
What do you mean?
Jeanette carefully lifted the apron from the trash can for Smith.
Can you still say the same after seeing this? Can you still criticize our mom?
She showed the apron's lining. The reality, unforeseen, froze Smith's expression.
What's this? No way!
The lining was filled with countless needles. Had I worn it without noticing, I could have been injured all over by now. This is the reality. This is her true nature.
Now you understand, right, Smith? What kind of person Bonnie is.
Even confronted with the truth, Smith seemed paralyzed, unable to believe.
This is a serious crime. Both Mom and I are considering whether to report this to the police.
Suddenly, the landline phone by the entrance rang loudly. Answering it, I heard an unwanted woman's laughter from the other side.
Ah, Brandy. Did the package arrive okay? I specified the time, so I thought it should have arrived by now and decided to call. How can you do such a terrible thing so easily?
Bonnie, without a hint of remorse and almost mocking me, said,
It's your own fault. You always interfere in other people's private lives, so I just gave you what you deserved. You brought this upon yourself. Oh, if you got hurt, next time I'll send you iodine or Band-Aids. I'll pass, since it didn't turn out the way you wanted. I wasn't injured.
Smith, who had been silently listening to our conversation, started to tremble.
I need to step out for a bit.
With tears in his eyes, Smith rushed out of the house. The next day, Smith returned and confessed that he had a heated argument with Bonnie rather than a discussion.
I've decided to keep some distance from her for a while. I never imagined she would do something so foolish.
According to Smith, it was unexpected for Bonnie that Smith would come back home at that time. Bonnie wanted to secretly harass me without Smith finding out, but her plan backfired when Smith learned about it. Panicked, Bonnie rambled.
The needles in the apron must have been the delivery person's doing. Maybe a driver fed up with their harsh work conditions did it as a form of protest.
But even Smith, as naive as he is, could see through her lies.
You should be thankful we didn't report you to the police,
Smith said sternly, and Bonnie smirked.
So what? Are you going to leave me? I don't care either way. Living with you has been bothersome and boring.
But Smith, not wanting a divorce, hastily suggested,
Let's separate for now. We need a cooling-off period. But no divorce.
I love you.
Why separation? Normally, this would lead to a divorce.
Hearing Smith's story, Jeanette raised her voice in panic. Why settle for just a separation after everything Mom's been through?
I'm thoroughly disappointed in you, Smith.
Jeanette sighed in frustration. I then asked Smith a question that had been bothering me since he announced his marriage.
Why did you decide to marry her in the first place?
Smith squirmed uncomfortably.
Well, that's something I can't really say to others.
But Jeanette, disappointed in Smith, pressed on.
Speak up. It's just, we were compatible at night.
Both Jeanette and I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Smith, who had never been popular with women since his student days, lacked immunity to love as an adult. It wouldn't have taken Bonnie much time to ensnare him. Apparently, Bonnie was quite skilled in bed. But now, that hardly mattered.
So, what will you two do now? Divorce or not?
Without hesitation, Smith said.
No divorce. I plan to mend things with Bonnie once the dust settles.
Feeling Smith's unwavering resolve, I lost all will to persuade him further.
Do as you please. If you want to reconcile with Bonnie, I won't oppose it. But don't involve us anymore,
and don't cross this house's threshold again. That's my condition."
I pushed him away coldly. Smith remained silent for a while before nodding slowly. "I understand. I won't trouble either of you any further." With that, he left the house. Smith later attempted to repair his relationship with Bonnie, but
"Why am I always the bad one? So, it's not wrong for your mother to intrude into my private life. Let's get a divorce."
Bonnie initiated the divorce.
"Mom, I finished work early today. Can I come over for dinner? I'll bring the ingredients."
"You're always welcome here. I'd love to have you."
"And there's someone I'd like to introduce to you soon. He's a senior from my university days."
From work troubles to relationship advice, my good relationship with my daughter continues. As for Smith, facing divorce papers from Bonnie.
"Just sign here, and it's done."
Despite being hopelessly unable to let go, rumors say Smith still follows Bonnie around. Though it pains me to worry about my son, as long as he doesn't change his mind, we've decided not to reach out to him. I pulled out something from the back of my closet, enveloped in the scent of mothballs.
"Jeanette, I want you to wear this dress at your wedding."
"Mom, you're getting ahead of yourself. You haven't even been introduced to him yet."
I secretly harbor a dream for Jeanette to marry, have children, and occasionally bring her kids to visit this house.
"If you don't want kids, maybe I'll have them. Maybe I should just divorce and we have them."
Suddenly, the word divorce popped up at an oddly serene dinner table. My heart skipped a beat, and I inadvertently stopped what I was doing. But I quickly lifted my head and faced the two of them again.
"All right, we're getting a divorce, then."
"Huh?"
Despite being the ones to bring it up, both looked surprised at my response. Seeing their reaction, I immediately backtracked on the divorce talk.
Right, of course. You're obviously joking."
Osamand laughed, relieved. Next to him, Carly covered her mouth with her hand, chuckling along. But the truth is, I do want a divorce. However, I haven't gathered enough evidence yet. I'm far from ready to make a move. I want to set things straight with Osamand and others, but only when everything is in order. This conversation only made me more determined than before.
"Yeah, just kidding."
I joined in on Osamand's laughter, making sure not to let on that I'm serious about wanting a divorce. My name is Lena. I'm 27. I used to work in an office at a design company, but after getting married, I quit my job to become a housewife. My husband's name is Osamand. We met at a party I was invited to by a friend. I've never been good at socializing. On days off, I'd stay in, and even on work days, I'd skip out on drinking parties and outings, preferring to spend time alone. Because of that lifestyle, it's no surprise I hadn't had a boyfriend in a while. All my friends and juniors were either married or in relationships. It made me anxious whenever the topic of boyfriends or husbands came up. I felt the pressure to find someone soon, when this opportunity came from a friend. My friend was surprised I took up the invitation.
"Wow, I invited you without expecting much. I know I'm the one that invited you, but did something happen?"
"Nothing really. Just had a change of heart. I'm getting to that age where I should find a boyfriend and start thinking about the future."
I shared my thoughts without holding anything back. Then,
I see. You've had a change of heart. I'm glad I invited you,"
my friend said, laughing. On the day of the party, I went to the bar, which was the venue, with my friend, and a few people were already there, chatting and having a good time. She easily joined the group, but I couldn't. Even as the party started,
I couldn't manage to join in on the conversations and ended up drinking alone at the edge of the room. I wondered if it was impossible for someone like me to find a boyfriend. I stared at my nearly empty glass, lost in thought. The lively chatter from around me filled the air. My friend seemed to be enjoying the party, being at the center of the conversation. I envied those who could genuinely enjoy such gatherings. I wished I could be like that. As I looked at my watch thinking about leaving early, someone approached me. "Hey, what's up? You look pretty lonely over here." "Huh." A man started talking to me. That man would later become my husband, Osamand. "Would you like to talk with me?" "Yes, I would." Osamand took a seat next to me, placing the drink he had been sipping on the table. We had introduced ourselves earlier, so we knew each other's names. "So, you're Lena, right?" "Yes, and you're?" "Osamand." "That's right. Thanks for remembering my name." Osamand thanked me, looking genuinely pleased. After that, we didn't join the rest of the group, opting instead to continue our conversation just between the two of us. We started with work, then moved on to hobbies, and even where we lived, the topics varied. "Wow, really?" Osamand seemed to pick up on my nervousness and made an effort to keep the conversation lively. Before I knew it, I was swept up in his enthusiasm, and my nervousness had vanished. Osamand was having fun talking, and he seemed genuinely interested in listening to me. Eventually, I found myself becoming fond of Osamand. I myself thought I was too easy. But for someone who doesn't usually talk to people, this was enough to make me take notice. After the party ended, we went to a bar to continue drinking, just the two of us. Alone with me, Osamand's demeanor changed completely from before, becoming more composed. Perhaps he had been playing up to the atmosphere before. Yet, his willingness to listen to me remained unchanged. Seeing this side of Osamand made my feelings for him grow. "Today was fun." "Thank you." "Thank you as well." We hit it off so well that we exchanged our numbers and agreed to meet again. After that, we started seeing each other frequently. Could things really go this smoothly? The moment I decided to find a boyfriend, I was invited to a party and met someone compatible. I had expected more of a struggle, so I was a bit taken aback by how easily things were progressing. About 2 months after the party, Osamand confessed his feelings, and we started dating. He was just as kind to me as he had been before we were officially together. Whenever we both had time off, we would go on drives or trips, spending time together. That said, Osamand was busy with work, so our schedules didn't always match up, and we probably saw each other less often than other couples might. But we made up for it with phone calls and emails. I was satisfied with that. To say I wasn't lonely would be a lie. I wanted to see Osamand more, to be with Osamand more. Those feelings only grew stronger day by day. However, on the days we could meet, I was filled with happiness. Each time, I was reminded of how much I liked Osamand. Then one day, during our usual routine, Osamand suddenly introduced me to a woman. "I want you to meet someone. Carly. She's an old friend of mine." "Pleased to meet you." The woman introduced as Carly was Osamand's childhood friend. From what I heard, Osamand and Carly had been close since kindergarten, and they still visited each other's parents' homes and went out to eat together. Carly has always been such a great person. "Oh, remember that time?" "Wait, why are you bringing that up now?" "I mean, it did happen, but..." Osamand and Carly were completely engrossed in their own world, chatting away. Naturally, I had no idea how to navigate this situation. All I could do was watch them with a forced smile, feeling out of place. Noticing my discomfort, Osamand said, I'm sorry. I figured you'd be seeing Carly around, so I thought I'd introduce you. Honestly, I wondered why I needed to get along with his childhood friend in the future. But I wasn't strong enough to voice such thoughts there and then. I just went along with it, trying not to upset Osamand and his friend.
Oh, is that so?
But you didn't know I was meeting with you today, right? Sorry if it feels like I just showed up out of the blue. Not at all. Please don't worry about it. I'm really glad to meet you. Really? Thank you. Carly smiled sweetly, thanking me. However, as time went on, Osamand and Carly continued to create their own little world, leaving me feeling left out. At first, I desperately tried to join in their conversation, but eventually, I realized it was futile and just sat there, sipping my coffee alone. If they were going to talk amongst themselves, I wondered why I was even needed there. I felt a mix of sadness and emptiness, silently observing them. The situation didn't change until 2 hours later when I finally managed to excuse myself from their company, after being treated like I wasn't there. I'm really sorry. It's been a while since I've seen Carly. I see. No, it's totally fine. It's good that you got to catch up after so long. Yeah. I'm really sorry. Osamand apologized, seeming genuinely remorseful. It appeared he was aware that he had done something wrong. I couldn't help feeling slightly angry that he had created this exclusive world with Carly in the first place. No, really, it's okay. I accepted Osamand's apology without holding any grudge. After that incident, Osamand never brought up Carly again. Perhaps he realized it was a sensitive issue. He started to check on my feelings more, likely thinking he had indeed made a mistake. At the time, I felt lonely and insecure, but deep down, I knew it wasn't something to make a big deal about. After all, they were childhood friends. It made sense that they'd get caught up in conversation after a long time apart. However, I couldn't bring myself to say I was okay with Carly. I didn't want to dredge up the topic myself. A few weeks after meeting Carly, Osamand's behavior returned to normal, and it felt like our daily life had resumed. A year later, Osamand proposed, and we got married. The wedding was attended by family, friends, colleagues, and Carly. Carly seemed genuinely happy for us. Congratulations on your wedding. I'm sure you know, but Osamand is really a great guy, and I believe you'll be very happy together. Thank you. Carly made a point to come over to me and speak. Her smile was a complex mix of happiness and loneliness. After the wedding, we returned to the new apartment we had rented as a married couple. Though we were already officially married and lived together, I remembered when we moved in and felt somewhat embarrassed. Osamand was right there beside me. Just the thought of being able to share the same space with him from now on filled my heart with joy. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of our future together. I wanted to spend forever with Osamand. However, this happy life did not last long. Even after marriage, Osamand was still busy with work, but he made sure to spend as much time with me as possible. Except for when he had work dinners or special occasions, he would always come home before the date changed, and despite being tired himself, he would offer kind words to me as I did the housework. He was with me all weekend, taking me on trips and shopping. It might have seemed ordinary, but I felt truly happy with just that. But then, suddenly, a certain person started to intrude on our lives, significantly changing our routine. It was during a weekend shopping trip in town with Osamand. I spotted a familiar figure. It was Carly. She had seen us too and hurried over with a happy expression. Hey, Osamand, Lena. Carly! What a coincidence! As I was about to greet her, Osamand casually reached out.
and tousled Carly's hair.
Hey, Osamand! You're messing up my hair.
Sorry. I just can't help it when I see you. I understood that they were close, but seeing them like this pained my heart. Osamand didn't seem to think it was a big deal, and Carly didn't seem to mind. They started talking without paying any attention to me, reigniting a sense of emptiness within me. I didn't know what to do, so I just looked at nearby products and thought vaguely about where to go next. Despite being able to see me, Carly continued to talk to Osamand without any concern. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes before ending. Sorry. I didn't realize you two were on a date today. My bad. It's fine. Right, Lena? Yeah, it's fine. Unable to deny it, I pretended not to mind. Since that day, Carly began to appear more frequently wherever Osamand and I went out together. I thought it was a coincidence the first 2 times, but after it kept happening, I couldn't help but think they were arranging it behind my back. Whenever they met, they acted as if it were a chance encounter.
Wow!
What a coincidence. That became their routine phrase. Once, I gathered the courage to ask, are you two in touch? Seeing each other so often when we're out, it seems unlikely to be just coincidence. However, they wouldn't admit it. No, it's just a coincidence. Right, Carly?
Yeah. Just a coincidence. Happened to be, right?
They laughed it off together. But their expressions seemed almost mocking. They would hold hands or touch each other's cheeks every time they met. Their level of physical affection seemed excessive. Despite being told they had always been this way, claiming it was normal for childhood friends, something about it didn't sit right with me.
Wait, should we stop holding hands? Lena looks mad.
Sorry, Lena. But Carly is really just an old friend. There's absolutely nothing weird between us, so don't worry, okay?
Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Well, it's not like I like you or anything.
After Carly's comment, Osamand cheerfully placed his hand on her head again. Despite my anger, Osamand continued his physical affection with Carly. Carly didn't seem to mind at all. Is it normal for childhood friends to be this close? Watching Osamand and Carly, my distrust grew day by day. After several similar incidents, I mustered up the courage to speak to Osamand. Osamand. What's up? Osamand looked at me with his usual kind smile. About Carly. I know she's your childhood friend, and I understand you're close, but could you maybe reduce the physical affection a bit?
Reduce it!
Yeah, since we're married. Osamand's face turned serious for a moment before he relaxed again. That brief serious expression scared me, making me regret bringing it up. Sorry. Was it bothering you? A little. Normally, Osamand would laugh it off and agree. But he was different that day. But you know, Carly and I are just childhood friends, right? There's really nothing to worry about.
What does that mean?
Just don't think too much about it. Consider it part of our communication. Okay. With a troubled smile, he walked away from me. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel anxious, regretting my question and wondering if I had made an unreasonable request or upset Osamand. At the same time, I questioned if I was wrong. As his wife, I wanted him to limit his physical contact with Carly, even though they were childhood friends. Nonetheless, life with Osamand continued uneasily. A month after my request, nothing had changed. In fact, it seemed to get worse. Carly started to intrude on our home. She would come over on weekdays and weekends, eat, and then leave.
with me preparing everything. Carly would just show up suddenly, spending time talking to Osamand on the sofa. Even when I asked for help with carrying things.
You can handle that much on your own, right?
Yeah. She would dismiss my request. By this time, Osamand had completely taken Carly's side. He hardly listened to me and always spoke in Carly's favor when I objected. Seriously. Lena can't do anything by herself.
Hey, don't say that in front of her, that's the worst.
They laughed at me as if I were a joke. Naturally, I didn't feel good about it. Whenever I returned to the kitchen without saying anything, I would end up being criticized.
Is she sulking?
Over just this?
Come on, that's a bit much, isn't it?
I continued preparing the meal, trying to ignore their voices. It seemed only fair that she help with preparations since she came over uninvited. Yet, why should I be the one to face complaints? Moreover, being accused of sulking or being incapable of doing anything alone was incredibly rude. Carly came over several times a week. And she always made sure to have a meal before leaving. Even during meals, there was no sense of calm. Carly would sit next to Osamand, constantly pestering him. Osamand seemed to not mind her actions. They would feed each other or share laughs, looking entirely like a couple to anyone observing. But it turns out Carly actually had a fiancé named Raymond. He worked at the same company as Carly, holding a rather prestigious position. Though I heard he was abroad currently. Still, I thought it inappropriate for someone engaged to engage in such excessive physical intimacy with their childhood friend.
Carly, could you maybe stop coming over so often? The food costs are adding up, and it's more work to cook.
However, Osamand just laughed off my request.
Come on. Carly's single right now, and she says it's lonely going home to an empty house. Maybe we should be a bit more understanding.
But
it's fine, really.
Osamand didn't seem inclined to criticize Carly at all. In fact, he seemed happier with her than with me. I wondered why Osamand couldn't show me the same smile. Eventually, I began to despise not only Carly but also the sight of Osamand smiling at her. A year into our marriage, Carly's intrusions continued unabated. By this time, I had given up, no longer complaining and simply catering to Carly. Maybe this was the arrangement Osamand and Carly desired. Their physical intimacy intensified, and they appeared even happier than before. I dreaded that this lifestyle would persist until Carly got married. The thought filled me with gloom. Divorce. The word started to cross my mind occasionally. Yet, I found it hard to take any action. Time kept moving forward. But one day, a comment from Carly prompted me to decide on divorce. Hey, aren't you two planning to have kids?
What?
Her tactless remark made me exclaim in surprise. Osamand and I had decided not to have children yet. And we might never do so. That's what I thought I had said, but Lena's just really against it.
What? I never said that.
I hadn't said anything of the sort. Osamand was trying to look good in front of Carly. I glared and contradicted him. Really, Lena?
It's been about a year since you got married, right? Why would you be against it?
No, I never said I was against. But Carly wasn't listening at all. Didn't Osamand like kids? Lena, isn't it selfish to say no? I'm not being selfish. I never said that. It's a real concern. Osamand continued to take Carly's side. Even in this situation. Choosing his childhood friend over his wife. It made me realize for the first time that perhaps I couldn't continue going on with him. Then Carly said something outrageous, pushing me further. If you don't want kids, maybe I'll have them. Maybe I should just divorce and we have them."
Osaman joined in with her laughter, not rebuking Carly's words. The casual mention of divorce shocked me, my heart raced, and I stopped what I was doing. Divorce. There are jokes that can be made and ones that shouldn't be. The inability to distinguish between the two was exasperating. However, I quickly faced them again. "All right, we're getting a divorce, then."
"Huh?"
They were surprised, even though they brought it up. I quickly corrected the notion of divorce.
"Just kidding. Maybe it's time we started thinking about kids." Right, of course. You're obviously joking."
Osaman laughed, relieved, while Carly covered her mouth beside him, smiling joyously. Such a happy occasion. But the truth was, I did want a divorce. Despite joking about it, I couldn't shake the thought. I'll really get a divorce. Annoyingly, Carly's remark made me decide to divorce Osaman. Yet, it was too early to act.
"Yeah, just kidding."
While formulating a plan in my head, I responded to Osaman. From observing Osaman and Carly up close, I suspected they might be having an affair. If that was the case, my options were limited. After much thought, I decided to hire a detective to gather evidence of the affair. I also tried to sneak a peek at Osaman's mobile phone to gather evidence myself. If they weren't cheating, I'd think of something else. But there was no need. When I checked Osaman's unlocked phone, there was an abundance of exchanges with Carly. The content was damning. From sweet conversations akin to those of lovers to suggestive messages and photos from hotel visits. There was more than enough to call it evidence. Considering Osaman didn't lock his phone, he seemed utterly careless. Further investigation by the detective confirmed they met frequently. Mostly at hotels. The dates they met matched the days Osaman told me he'd be home late. He had lied about overtime and drinking parties to meet Carly. Even though I had a vague idea they were cheating, seeing concrete evidence made me feel indescribable. Meanwhile, Osaman and Carly's behavior didn't change. Carly kept coming over, eating, teasing me, and having fun. Unaware of what I was doing behind the scenes, their carefree actions seemed almost ludicrous. About a month after I started gathering evidence, Osaman invited me to an event.
"There's an engagement party for Carly next month." "Engagement party?"
"Yeah, you know Carly's fiancé is pretty high up, right? So, they need to have a sort of introduction party for the marriage." "So, her partner is coming back?"
"Yeah, I think he might already be back."
The engagement party was irrelevant to me. The nerve of having such a party while engaging in an affair baffled me. "I see. You've been invited? You should go," I said dismissively, somewhat irritated by Osaman's nonchalant laughter. But his response was unexpected. "What are you talking about? You're coming with me."
"Me? With you? Why?"
"Because you've always been so helpful to Carly." "Oh, I see. She wants me there because I was helpful. Did they really invite me for that reason?" My heart, already jaded, doubted even the reason for my invitation. But it would be rude to decline if I was invited. "I thought you might not like parties. Can you manage?" "No, I'll go. She invited me, after all." Osaman's face brightened at my words.
"Great. I'll let Carly know."
He seemed pleased as he went to his room with his phone, likely to contact Carly. In truth, I didn't want to go. The last thing I wanted was to see Carly happy. Why should I put myself in such a situation? However, as I prepared, an idea struck me. This plan could significantly change my current predicament. If so,
using the party to my advantage was too good an opportunity to miss. What I'm about to do is low as a person. But I had been tormented by Osamand and Carly far more. A little revenge seemed justified. I prepared for the party and my plan of retaliation simultaneously. A month later, the day of the party arrived. Dressed appropriately, Osamand and I headed to the venue. Entering the venue, the opulence of chandeliers, carpets, and tables made me hesitate. The old Osamand would have reassured me here, but now he was busy scanning the room for someone. The guests all seemed important, making me feel out of place. Then, someone called out,
"Ah, Osamand! You made it!"
Turning toward the voice, I saw Carly, accompanied by a fresh-faced young man and a kindly-looking elderly couple. Apparently, the young man was Carly's fiancé, Raymond, and the elderly couple were her parents.
"Congratulations, Carly!" "Thank you. And to you too, and Raymond too." "Congratulations."
"Thank you for your kind words." Osamand was unusually polite. A side of him I might have never seen before. Afterward, the party officially began with an announcement. After getting my meal, I returned to my seat to find Osamand and Carly's parents engaged in a lively conversation. "Osamand, you and Carly are childhood friends, right? What was she like back then?"
"Carly back then? Hey, that's kind of embarrassing."
Osamand, unfazed by Carly's embarrassment, shared stories of her past.
"She liked catching bugs and racing. We used to play tag a lot." "You're really going to tell that story?"
Carly squirmed, visibly embarrassed, but not entirely displeased. "You two really are close. Watching you, it's like you're real siblings." I knew it was impolite, but I couldn't let myself be swept along if I wanted to execute my plan. I apologized internally as I interjected. Osamand seemed surprised by my interruption, eyes wide.
"Really? What's it like when Carly is with Osamand?"
"They're very close. How should I put it? They're like lovers."
"Hey, Lena!"
Osamand tried to stop me, but I continued. "Carly often comes over for meals. She talks with Osamand the whole time I'm preparing food, looking very happy. During meals, they feed each other, hold hands. They're really close."
"Hey, what are you?"
I could feel the atmosphere freeze with my words. Carly's parents and Raymond looked at Osamand and Carly as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing.
"Feed each other?" "Yes." "Oh, I don't have photos of them feeding each other, but I do have pictures of them looking very close and their exchanges. Would you like to see?" "Hey! Lena!"
Before Osamand could stop me, I opened my mobile phone to show the evidence gathered by the detective and myself. Raymond's face paled significantly upon seeing it.
"Lena! Don't say weird things."
"Weird? I'm just sharing the truth. This is how you two usually are." Osamand bit his lip, unable to say anything, his expression sour. But Carly lashed out at me. I felt vindicated. I had never seen Osamand and Carly look so frustrated. Deciding to go through with my revenge felt right.
"Lena! Stop being freaky! And why do you have these photos? You shouldn't know about this. What, did you hire a detective? Unbelievable!"
"Yes, I hired a detective." "Why?" Osamand was taken aback, realizing his actions with Carly, which went beyond mere childhood friendship, had been exposed. "Want to know why?" I pulled out a completed divorce application from my bag and slammed it in front of Osamand. "Let's get divorced. I can't take it anymore."
"There's no need to say that here.
Ever since we got married, Carly has been a constant presence in my life. We ran into her whenever we went out, and despite asking you to keep distance, she came over for dinner multiple times. And to top it off, you lied about working late to meet her at hotels. What's the point of being married then?
I let it all out. Osaman's loud response had drawn the attention of everyone in the venue.
I know it was wrong, but if you knew it was wrong, why didn't you stop? Didn't I ask you to stop repeatedly?
Well, yes, but
you don't really think it was wrong, do you? If you did, you wouldn't make excuses, you'd apologize.
Yeah, sorry. As Osaman and I argued, Carly attempted to intervene.
Hey, stop arguing here. Raymond, Mom, Dad, help.
However, the three of them did not take Carly's side.
Carly, those photos are real, aren't they? What? I'm asking if they're real. Not that you'd admit to cheating on your own.
Raymond looked profoundly disheartened. Understandably so. He must have been thinking of his fiancée Carly while working abroad, only to find her cheating with her childhood friend.
With so much evidence, I can't marry you. I was a fool to trust you. Wait. That's not true. They're all lies.
Lies?
So, you're saying Lena fabricated all this just to trap you and Osaman? Yes, that's right.
What? I couldn't hold back anymore. Was she not satisfied after manipulating me all this much? Still trying to control the narrative? Even now, Carly wouldn't admit to the affair, which infuriated me further, and I couldn't help but shout.
Who would do such a thing for you? I don't have the time for that. If I were to spend my time on you, I'd rather find a new hobby. What did you say?
Carly snapped back at my words. However, it was Carly's parents who stopped her.
Carly! Enough! Aren't you ashamed of yourself for doing such things?
Dad.
I never thought you would do something like this. Sure, you and Osaman were close, but I never imagined it would lead to this. It's truly shameful. What? Don't say it's shameful.
It is embarrassing.
Raymond, I'm so sorry. It's understandable that you can't marry her now, and we won't mind if you call off the engagement.
I too must apologize. I'm truly sorry. Watching her parents apologize to Raymond, Carly seemed to realize the irreparable mistake she had made. Tears streaming, she pleaded with Raymond.
I'm sorry. Please, don't call off the engagement.
I've had enough of you. I can't marry you.
No.
Osaman, witnessing Carly's situation, also begged for my forgiveness. Lena, I'm really sorry. I'll never cheat again. Please, let's not divorce. But I couldn't possibly trust Osaman's words.
Never cheat again? Unbelievable. I'm divorcing you. And I'll be claiming compensation too. Looks like your beloved Carly is getting dumped too, so you two might as well stay together. No, wait, think this over. Absolutely not. I can't live with someone like you any longer.
I grabbed the divorce papers again and pushed them toward Osaman.
There's no way we can rebuild from this. If you understand, agree to the divorce now.
Realizing I was serious, Osaman no longer resisted and agreed to the divorce. Finally, I could get away from this man. And I wouldn't have to see Carly's face anymore. This realization brought a smile to my face. A few days later, Osaman and I were officially divorced.
I managed to claim compensation from both Osamand and Carly, which was satisfying. Carly and Raymond officially ended their engagement too. Despite the scandal, neither Osamand nor Carly quit their jobs. I thought they might leave their positions due to the divorce and scandal spreading through their companies. However, it seems they couldn't afford to quit, needing to pay the compensation. In a way, that served them right. Thinking so might mean I have a bad personality too. After the divorce was finalized, I apologized to Raymond for ruining the party. But he kindly said, "No worries. Thank you for letting me know about Carly's affair. It was a big help." A year after divorcing Osamand, I'm living comfortably alone, working a new job in a new city. I'm not sure what Osamand and Carly are up to, but the compensation is being deposited monthly, so they must be managing somehow. It seems I'm better off living alone than with someone. I probably won't marry again. I cherish these happy days and plan to continue enjoying my favorite tea alone. Hey, Abigail. Are you really okay? On the morning of the field trip, I asked my granddaughter Abigail. But Abigail replied, "I'm fine. Plus, I'm looking forward to Grandma's delicious sandwiches, so I'm going." And left the house earlier than usual. I watched Abigail head to school with a prayerful heart. I hope it ends up being a fun day. I couldn't help but wish. But my wish didn't come true. Just 30 minutes later, the worst happened. "Abigail! What happened?" When I opened the door, there stood my granddaughter, who had supposedly left for the field trip earlier, crying with her backpack covered in mud. Then, "Look inside," she said, offering the backpack filled with a ton of trash. I felt a surge of rage at the tragic sight. "What is this?" As I trembled with anger trying to remove the trash from the backpack. "Is something wrong?" My son Richard, who was working remotely, appeared behind me. "Richard, this," I said, trying to suppress my anger and disappointment, presenting Abigail's backpack to him. Richard then picked up the trash from the backpack and, "Is this?" murmured with a smile towards Abigail. The next moment, "That's great," he said. "Yeah, everyone put it in." I was so happy I cried. "Now, I'll be late for the field trip if I don't go," Abigail said, laughing, and went back to school. Left out of the loop, I stood dumbfounded watching Abigail energetically run off. My name is Isabella, a 55-year-old housewife. My husband Kevin and I have been living with our son Richard and granddaughter Abigail for the past 5 months. The reason for our living together was that Richard's wife, Madison, passed away due to illness. Madison had terminal cervical cancer. She always had severe menstrual pains and would often rely on over-the-counter painkillers when feeling unwell. Additionally, she had irregular periods and occasional abnormal bleeding from a young age, which made her insensitive to bodily changes. As a result, by the time she realized something was wrong, it was already too late. When the hospital called to say she needed to be admitted for treatment immediately, I was in shock. Richard told me over the phone that Madison had cervical cancer, his voice filled with despair and powerlessness. The shock of the cancer diagnosis was one thing, but in Madison's case, the cancer had already begun to spread to other areas, making surgery impossible. Therefore, they had to try chemotherapy and radiation therapy. However, the treatments did not have the hoped-for effects. Richard's voice became increasingly dark and weak with each phone call. All I could do was listen to my son's stories. And respond. Then, a year ago, Madison quietly passed away in her hospital bed. It happened just 8 months after the cancer was discovered. If only I had pushed harder for her to go to the gynecologist.
After Madison's death, Richard blamed himself for his indifference to her health and fell into a deep depression. In addition to caring for Abigail, who was in the first grade, and managing unfamiliar household tasks, he was overwhelmed both physically and emotionally. Abigail, too, seemed confused by the sudden loss of her mom, occasionally crying at night and refusing to go to school. My husband and I wanted to encourage and support them, so we suggested living together. Initially, Richard was hesitant, but he said,
"Having someone always at home might make Abigail feel safer,"
becoming more open to the idea. However, Richard had one major concern about living together. It was that Abigail would have to transfer schools as we moved in together. Richard worried that transferring schools, especially while grieving Madison's death, would be too much of a psychological burden for Abigail. But facing the reality of juggling work, household duties, and childcare, he felt he was reaching his limit. After much deliberation, Richard couldn't come to a decision. So, he decided to ask Abigail herself how she felt about it.
"Hey, Abigail. Grandma and Grandpa said they'd like us to live with them at their house. What do you think?" Live at Grandma and Grandpa's house? I want to go.
Is that so? It means you'll have to change schools. Is that okay?
What does change schools mean?
It means just like moving houses, you'll move to a new school. So, you won't see your current school friends anymore. Is that okay?
I see. Does Dad want to move?
Dad is fine with whatever. What you want is most important.
Then I want to move. That means Grandma will always be with me, right?
Yes, both Grandma and Grandpa will be with you always. So, let's start preparing for the move, okay? Abigail nodded strongly in agreement to Richard's final confirmation. Thus, my son's family came to live with us. Later on, I learned that Abigail decided to move for Richard's sake. Dad looks so busy with work every day, and he seems really busy with things like my homework and meals. So, I thought it would be easier for Dad if Grandma and Grandpa were with us. When Madison was in critical condition, I had stayed at Richard's house and took over all the household duties. It seems Abigail thought that living with us would reduce Richard's burden based on that experience. Both my husband and I were deeply touched by Abigail's kindness. And so, in place of busy Richard, we gave all our love and time to Abigail. Perhaps because of our efforts, Abigail, who was initially quiet and reserved after moving, gradually began to regain her former brightness. Still, sometimes she would look sadly at classmates chatting happily with their moms during shopping trips or school events. Even if she's putting on a brave face, it must still be hard for her. At that moment, I resolved to do anything I could for Abigail's smile. One day, while shopping at a nearby supermarket, a woman around Richard's age approached me.
"Hello. You're Abigail's grandmother, right? I'm the mom of Scarlett, who's in the same class. My daughter always talks about how kind you are."
This woman, who introduced herself as Elizabeth, approached me with a strong perfume scent and a forced smile. I recognized her face, so I knew immediately she was a parent from the same class. However, I didn't have a very good impression of Elizabeth. The reason is, when I attended a school event in place of Richard, Elizabeth and other moms would look at me and Abigail and laugh, sharing rumors. I thought it might be a misunderstanding at first, but the same happened even when Richard attended. I thought she was quite rude. But since we were just classmates' parents and didn't interact much, I decided not to worry about it. Being unexpectedly approached by someone I was not comfortable with.
What should I do? I'm not very fond of this person,
I thought to myself. But thinking of her as my granddaughter's mom,
I decided to continue the conversation for a while. Elizabeth then stood in the middle of the supermarket aisle and suddenly started bragging about her family. I can't give you details because it's personal, but my husband is a rising star in a big corporation. So, he earns more than most people. And he's trusted so much by his boss that he's about to get promoted. Is that so? Congratulations. Plus, my daughter is academically excellent and popular in her class. She was even scouted to be a kids model. That's impressive. I should be going soon. Thinking it wasn't a conversation worth blocking the supermarket aisle for, I attempted to leave. Then Elizabeth, "Just listen till the end, I'm not finished," raised her voice suddenly. Taken aback by her abrupt change, I involuntarily stopped. This is why I hate dealing with old people. Anyway, what I'm saying is, your granddaughter is a bad influence, so I'd appreciate it if she didn't associate with my daughter anymore. Eh? What do you mean? Abigail's mom died from an illness, right? It's really sad for Abigail, left behind. She still looks sad sometimes. It's like she's spreading unhappiness? Like a walking misfortune? What are you trying to say? Basically, Abigail's presence is bothersome. What are you talking about? It's a critical time for us. My husband is up for a promotion. So, I've told my daughter not to hang out with Abigail, to avoid catching her bad luck. But Abigail keeps following her around, and it's causing us trouble. Please tell her off firmly. Elizabeth said that and disappeared into the crowd at the supermarket with a snide smile. I was left standing there, stunned by the cruel content of the conversation and the unexpected event, unable to retort. That evening, when my husband Kevin came home, I told him about what happened at the supermarket. So, that happened. Maybe Abigail is having a hard time at school? What should we do? Call the teacher? Oh, should we consult with Richard first?
Isabella, calm down. Did any other parents say something like this?
Eh? No, this was the first time.
Then let's just talk to Richard and observe a bit more. We don't want to make a fuss and make Abigail feel worse, right?
But to be told such things? She must be suffering at school. At least, let's ask about how things are at school. Okay?
All right, calm down. I'll bring it up during dinner tonight and see how things go from there. Is that okay?
Yes, please. My husband reluctantly agreed, understanding my feelings. I really wanted to ask Abigail directly. But upon reflection, I might press her too much out of concern if I were to ask. Thinking this, my husband seemed more suited to calmly handle the conversation this time. That night, dinner was just the three of us, as Richard came home late from work. Abigail helped with dinner as usual and enjoyed my cooking, saying it was delicious. From her behavior, it was hard to believe she was having a hard time at school.
Maybe she's hiding it so we won't notice.
For the first time today, I doubted Abigail's actions. And as the meal was coming to an end, I signaled my husband. He cleared his throat and casually asked Abigail, "How's the new school? Are you having fun?" Abigail stopped eating and was silent for a while at the sudden question. Then, in a small voice, "It was fun before, but not so much now," she answered. I thought to myself, I knew it. Then, "What's not fun?" I asked Abigail. Abigail hesitantly began to talk about what was happening at school. Scarlett suddenly said she didn't want to play anymore. She said we couldn't be together during break or when going home from school. According to Abigail, Scarlett had suddenly started ignoring and avoiding her about a month ago. And because of that, other classmates also began to act distant towards Abigail. Why doesn't Scarlett want to play with you anymore? Did you ask her why? My husband also asked Abigail, sounding concerned. But it seems Abigail herself couldn't think of any reason. Maybe everyone hates me now? Abigail muttered, then cried with big tears rolling down her cheeks.
I may have underestimated how serious the situation was.
I quietly stood up, hugged Abigail, and gently rubbed her back. Then, Richard came home. Surprised by the sight of Abigail crying, my husband explained the conversation during dinner. Richard, somehow very calm, knelt down to match Abigail's gaze and said, "It's okay, Abigail. No matter what, the three of us will protect you." He gently stroked Abigail's head. Then, standing up, he said, "Dad, can I talk to you for a sec?" And called my husband to another room to start a discussion. Probably about what to do next. Abigail, perhaps touched by Richard's words, began to cry loudly, releasing her pent-up feelings. I held her, letting her cry until she felt better. And strongly wished that these sad tears would only be for today. A few days later, Abigail brought home a letter about an upcoming field trip.
The timing is terrible, knowing she's not getting along with her friends and now a field trip.
The moment I read the letter, I imagined Abigail being alone on the field trip. And remembered the big tears from a few days ago, feeling my heart was about to burst.
Hey, Abigail. Just in case, if you don't want to go on the field trip, you don't have to force yourself.
I shared my thoughts with Abigail before consulting Richard or my husband. I knew it was important to discuss as a family, but I couldn't help worrying about Abigail. Then, after a moment of silence, Abigail said, "I'm okay. I want to go on the field trip because I want to eat Grandma's sandwiches," and answered with her usual bright smile. That night, Abigail excitedly told her dad and my husband about the field trip. Both smiled and said, "Sounds fun." But I couldn't shake off my worries. So, on the morning of the day, "Hey, Abigail. Are you really okay?" I asked again. However, Abigail said, "I'm okay. Plus, I'm looking forward to Grandma's delicious sandwiches, so I'm going." And left the house earlier than usual. I watched Abigail head to school with a prayerful heart.
Please, let it end as a fun day.
But my wish did not come true. Just 30 minutes later, the worst happened. The doorbell rang and I rushed to the front door in a panic. "Abigail! What happened?" There stood my granddaughter, who had supposedly left for the field trip earlier, crying with her backpack covered in mud. Then, "Look inside," she said, offering the backpack filled with a ton of trash. The leisure sheet we folded neatly together the night before, the field trip guidebook we colored cutely, and the sandwiches I made that morning were all buried under the trash and not visible. I felt a surge of intense anger at the tragic sight. "What is this?" as I trembled with anger trying to remove the trash from the backpack. "Is something wrong?" My son Richard, who was working remotely, appeared behind me. Despite everything, Richard was worried about Abigail too. Unusually for him, he had said, "I'll work remotely today," and stayed in the living room from the morning to keep an eye on Abigail. And after Abigail left, he seemed restless and couldn't concentrate on his work. Richard must have been hoping that Abigail would enjoy the field trip and return home happily. But instead, this happened. "Richard, this," I said, trying to suppress my anger and despair while presenting Abigail's backpack to him. Then Richard picked up the trash from the backpack and,
"Is this?"
murmured with a smile towards Abigail. The next moment, "That's great," he said. I was confused by Richard's incomprehensible behavior, almost raising my voice in confusion. However, Abigail, just like Richard, laughed and said,
"Yeah, everyone put it in." I was so happy I cried. "Now, I'll be late for the field trip if I don't go,"
and went back to school. Left out of the loop, I stood dumbfounded watching Abigail energetically run off. Richard then told me,
"We've taken care of it, it's going to be okay now,"
and smiled gently before going upstairs. My head was still full of unanswered questions. But I didn't want to disturb Richard while he was working, so I silently started to clean up the dishes in the living room. I don't really understand, but I'm just glad Abigail could smile. At that moment, I was happier to see Abigail's smile than to resolve my own questions. Since Richard said,
"It's going to be okay,"
I thought I could talk to him later at leisure. I felt a sense of relief for the first time in days and felt lighter. After finishing the chores, I unusually dozed off on the living room sofa. When I woke up, it was an hour before Abigail's return.
"Oh no! I slept so much. I have to do the laundry, prepare the bath, and make dinner."
I hurried to finish the chores and was preparing dinner when, as expected, Abigail returned home. As usual, the doorbell rang. And I responded with, "Coming." But the scene displayed on the screen made me tense up again. There was a man with a regretful face, a girl who looked like she might start crying any moment, and Elizabeth with a very unhappy face. In a panic, I called for Richard upstairs. Surprised but calm, Richard first opened the door and warmly welcomed Abigail.
"Welcome back."
With a smile. Abigail returned the smile just like in the morning. "I'm home," she answered and jumped into Richard's arms. Watching Richard and the others. "Nice to meet you, I'm Scarlett's dad."
May I have a moment of your time?"
The unfamiliar man spoke in a weak voice. Richard quietly responded, "Please, come in," and welcomed the three of them to the entrance. Indeed, this man was Scarlett's dad, and the girl was Abigail's classmate, Scarlett. Upon entering, Scarlett's dad immediately started to apologize deeply. "I'm truly sorry for my wife's disgraceful actions that deeply hurt your daughter." Next to him, "I'm sorry, Abigail." Scarlett also tearfully apologized. Scarlett's dad then continued to explain the situation. It turns out Scarlett was popular among her friends, and Elizabeth took pride in that. However, when Abigail transferred to the school, she quickly became the center of attention in the class. Scarlett didn't mind this and would often talk about Abigail to Elizabeth. Elizabeth then said,
"Just because she's a transfer student, she's getting too much attention. Using the fact that she doesn't have a mom to garner sympathy from everyone. What a mean girl. Scarlett is the star of the class. I'll make sure she realizes that."
And she told Scarlett,
"Listen, Scarlett. Abigail is actually a very mean girl. You shouldn't hang out with her. Make sure to tell this to your classmates too and suggest that everyone stops playing with Abigail. Got it? You can do it, right?"
I really wanted to keep playing with Abigail. But if I broke the promise, Mom would punish me. Scarlett clung to her dad's arm and earnestly shared her feelings. It later turned out that the punishment Scarlett mentioned involved Elizabeth hitting her on the head, back, or buttocks. Scarlett was just scared of the punishment and had been following Elizabeth's orders. Elizabeth, who had been controlling Scarlett through violence, didn't expect what happened next. Not a single one of Scarlett's classmates accepted her suggestion. Instead, wanting to cheer up Abigail, who was mourning her mom, they secretly collected empty snack boxes with points for Abigail's favorite character merchandise. Unaware of this, Abigail had been concerned about her classmates whispering and hiding things from her. A few days ago during dinner, "Maybe everyone hates me. That's why," she tearfully told us. But in reality, Abigail wasn't disliked by anyone. On the contrary, the kids had come up with the idea to surprise her with gifts on the field trip day. Abigail went to school earlier than usual that day because her classmates had called her out for the surprise. When she arrived in the classroom, her classmates filled her backpack with those empty boxes.
Wow, thank you, everyone. Oh, I need to tell Dad and Grandma about this. I'll be right back.
Abigail excitedly left the classroom, clutching her backpack. But she tripped and fell at the shoe lockers, getting her backpack covered in mud. That's when Scarlett happened to pass by.
Abigail, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just going to go home for a bit.
A forgotten item?
No, look, isn't it amazing?
Scarlett remembered the classmates' surprise gift upon seeing inside Abigail's backpack.
I'm going to show it to Grandma and Dad.
Seeing Abigail's beaming smile, Scarlett wanted to do something for her too. So she said, "Oh, wait. You're hurt, so let me put this on you," and offered to put her cherished character Band-Aid on Abigail's knee.
Really? Isn't this your treasure?
It's okay. Because Abigail is an important friend.
Thank you. I'll rush over and show you, or else we'll be late for the field trip.
On her way home, Abigail seemed moved by everyone's kindness, tears overflowing. I saw Abigail, muddy backpack and all, crying, and thought she had a terrible time at school. But to think such a wonderful thing was happening. Both Richard and I were moved by this wonderful event and found ourselves in tears.
Scarlett really loves you. So, if you don't mind, please play with Scarlett again. We'd really appreciate it.
Scarlett's dad said this and then apologized deeply once more. Your feelings have come across clearly, so please, no need for apologies. Abigail, you can make up with Scarlett, right?
Yeah. Scarlett is an important friend.
Afterward, I'm so sorry, they said, apologizing repeatedly as the three of them went home. Throughout this conversation, Elizabeth didn't say a word. She glared at us the entire time with a look of dissatisfaction.
To hurt a child and not even apologize.
I thought Elizabeth was rude and selfish for just standing there without apologizing. But I was about to learn that wasn't the case. What? Scarlett's dad is Kevin's subordinate? After Abigail went to bed, I reported the evening's events to my husband, along with Richard. It was then, from Richard and my husband, that I heard the true story. According to Richard, the realization that Scarlett's dad was my husband's subordinate came from a casual conversation at a school event. But thinking it would be awkward to bring it up, he decided to let it go. Dad's job and me are entirely separate. But when it comes to Abigail, it's a different story. A few nights before, after seeing Abigail in tears, Richard told my husband about Scarlett's dad. The next day, my husband called Scarlett's dad to discuss what had happened. Scarlett's dad promptly checked the facts with Elizabeth and Scarlett. And upon finding out my husband's story was true, he rushed to finish his work and came to our house to apologize.
So that's why Elizabeth was glaring. But it turns out she's decent after all.
He's very serious and trustworthy, both in his work and character. Maybe even too serious. We'll have to support him, as it might get tough from here on. Just as my husband had secretly predicted, Elizabeth and her husband ended up divorcing soon after. However, since Elizabeth was a housewife,
if you want a divorce, you'll need to ensure my lifestyle. And I'll never give up Scarlett's custody.
I need $5,000 a month for living and child support. If you can't pay, no divorce.
She demanded unreasonable conditions. Scarlett's dad consulted a lawyer and began gathering evidence to make the divorce favorable for him. It then came to light that Elizabeth had been cheating with a man she met on a dating app. Elizabeth was obsessed with her affair partner, but suddenly, she could no longer contact him. After being blocked from messaging and calls, Elizabeth was always irritated. And that irritation gradually turned into excessive expectations for Scarlett.
You have to be the best at lessons and school. If you fail, there will be consequences.
Scarlett worked hard and diligently met Elizabeth's expectations. Yet, Elizabeth continued to punish her for unreasonable reasons regularly. This was officially recognized, and Scarlett's custody was granted to her dad. He even demanded compensation for the affair, and Elizabeth, now working part-time, is struggling to pay it. After this event, a pleasant change occurred in our home. Abigail, who previously only had my husband and me to play with after school, now had a playmate. And that was Scarlett. To be honest, I didn't have a very good image of Scarlett. But after the divorce was finalized and she was freed from Mom's control, Scarlett turned out to be a very kind and considerate child. Above all, Abigail's joyful smile when playing with Scarlett said everything. Since then, Abigail and Scarlett have been playing together almost every day. I am now very happy to see Abigail's smile every day, something I've always wished for. And I plan to continue pouring unwavering love into Abigail, hoping this happiness lasts forever. On the day of my beloved niece's wedding, like she was my own child. Actually, the choir we booked for today won't make it in time due to an accident. Please. I understand your situation, but I'm begging you, sing for my daughter's sake. The venue manager, Mr. Brown, and my sister Linda pleaded with me. I, a former opera singer, had decided 20 years ago never to involve myself with opera again. Yet, if I don't sing now, my precious niece's wedding will end imperfectly. I'll sing with all my heart. After making that resolution, my life took a dramatic turn. My name is Nancy. It's been 25 years since I married my husband, Paul. Nancy, it's our 25th anniversary this year. How about we take a trip somewhere?
I'm surprised at you suggesting that, Paul. I thought I was the only one excited about celebrating our anniversaries every year.
That's not true at all. I'm just a poker face. We're celebrating 25 years of marriage. Perhaps it's because we never had children. But that never happened. Meanwhile, my sister Linda, who married around the same time as me, has a daughter, Betty. That's why I used to struggle with the lively interactions of Linda's family when we all gathered. It felt like the happiness of a family with children was being flaunted in front of me. But those feelings belong to a distant past. Delighted by the travel proposal from my husband, I immediately called Linda the next day. Did you guys do anything for your 25th anniversary?
Yes, the three of us went on a trip. It was fun.
A trip, nice. By the way, speaking of which, Betty is getting married.
Really? Congratulations!
I was thrilled by the surprise news from Linda, my voice brimming with excitement. The greetings between our families were already over, and it seems the wedding is set for November, 3 months from now. Linda asked us to attend Betty's wedding as a couple, and I happily agreed. I was genuinely delighted about Betty's wedding, whom I cherished like my own child. Betty will be so happy. And Nancy, there's one more favor I want to ask of you. But the next moment, my face clouded over upon hearing Linda's words. Betty is looking for someone to sing a hymn at her wedding. Nancy, won't you sing? The venue can arrange a choir for the wedding, can't they? Trying not to let my irritation show, I kept my voice as calm as possible. I want you to sing. I kind of understood what Linda was getting at. But this request is something I can't accept.
Wanting to end the call quickly, I let my emotions take over and raised my voice.
I can't do it. I decided not to sing ever again after that day. I'm glad to attend the wedding, but I won't sing.
With that, I hung up the phone, ignoring Linda, who seemed about to say something else. My heart was pounding loudly. The image that came to mind was of myself, crying in a hospital room. The truth is, I used to be an opera singer until 20 years ago. I loved singing since I was little. My family always praised me when I sang loudly. That joy made me sing anytime, anywhere. Especially, a famous hymn I often hummed. I didn't understand the lyrics at all, but I somehow liked it and eventually became interested in opera. Encouraged by my parents to master what I loved, I studied vocal music in college and then worked hard at an opera training center to become an opera singer. I thought I was invincible, being able to make a career out of what I loved. I didn't even notice my body was screaming out in distress. By the time I realized, the seed of happiness inside me had shattered. I cried my heart out. It was then I decided never to sing opera again. Remembering the painful past made my head ache. I glanced at a photo on the windowsill. It was taken last year on our anniversary with my husband. Everything's fine, I'm happy now. I reassured myself while taking deep breaths. I managed to calm myself down. I interacted with Linda as if nothing had happened, and finally, the day of Betty's wedding arrived. The sky was high, the air crisp, and the chirping of birds echoed. Next to the family waiting room was the bridal room, and seeing Betty in her beautiful bridal dress, I couldn't hold back my tears. It's overwhelming, the feeling of a daughter getting married. The groom had kindness oozing from his face, a wonderful man. Betty, smiling beside her groom, looked the most beautiful I'd ever seen. Into this blissful atmosphere, a venue staff member rushed over with a grim face. Worried about what had happened, I peeked into the bridal room and saw the manager, Mr. Brown, repeatedly apologizing alongside the staff. The faces of the bride and groom clouded over as they listened to Mr. Brown. Betty, trying not to ruin her beautifully made-up face, was holding back tears, but drop by drop, tears streamed down her cheeks. As I watched with concern, the manager, Mr. Brown, and Linda approached me.
Actually, the choir we booked for today won't make it in time due to an accident.
Hey Nancy, please. I fully understand your circumstances, but for Betty's sake, won't you sing? The manager, Mr. Brown, and Linda pleaded with me. Memories of the past resurfaced.
I'm sorry, but the baby inside you has already passed away.
The harsh reality hit me as I lay in the hospital bed. A year into my marriage, still in the early stages of my opera career, I took on even the smallest jobs to build my career. In addition to that, I never missed a day of practice. I had no days off, and my days were so busy that I hardly had enough time for sleep or meals. I thought I could push myself further since I was doing what I loved. That's what I thought. Then, I discovered I was pregnant. When I found out about the pregnancy, I was genuinely happy. But at the same time, I became desperate to increase my fame while I still could, pushing myself harder than ever before. However, during a rehearsal for a concert, I experienced a pain in my abdomen like nothing I'd ever felt before. I collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, where the doctor informed me that I had miscarried.
I'm so sorry, my baby. It's all my stupid fault.
Nancy, calm down. It's not your fault. My husband said, holding me tightly, but his warmth only made the pain and guilt worse. I was tormented by self-blame and spent many days mentally and physically unstable. To add to the misfortune, subsequent tests revealed that my ovaries were afflicted with cancer. It was in the early stages, with no symptoms yet, so there was a high chance of a complete cure through an oophorectomy. So, I underwent the surgery immediately, and it was a success. There was no metastasis. But I was left unable to ever conceive again. All that remained was a sense of emptiness. The baby had died because I was too obsessed with opera. And then, as if it were divine punishment, I was rendered infertile. At that time, I was emotionally unstable, crying every night, and I cried so much that I developed inflammation in my throat and lost my voice. I can't possibly sing opera like this. My husband just silently stayed by my side as I tried to smile through the sadness. Even after my throat healed, I never felt like singing opera again. I decided that I should no longer involve myself with opera. With that, I discarded everything related to opera. At that time, I was trying to atone for the baby that couldn't come into this world by eliminating opera from my life. This is the hymn that was scheduled to be sung today. Brought back to reality, I looked at the score that the manager, Mr. Brown, had handed to me, and it was the name of the hymn I used to sing. This song. Unconsciously, my hand went to my stomach. It was a song full of memories for me, one that my mother used to hum when I was little. And it was the song I, who was supposed to become a mother, gently sang to my unborn baby while stroking my belly every day. Nancy, I think everyone is waiting for your song, my husband said, nodding gently. Should I really sing it? Linda gently held my hand. I want you to sing, Nancy. I grew up listening to your voice. What are you saying? We laughed together. Linda's words suddenly lightened my heart. The choir not being able to come today must have been fate. This chance given by God. I'll give it my all. There's only 1 hour left until the ceremony starts, but can you sing? Yes, I'll sing with all my heart. I immediately started vocal warm-ups in a separate room that was hastily prepared. It had been 20 years since I'd sung with such earnestness. Nancy, you haven't changed. I love your voice, Linda said. Tearing up, Linda said this, and in response, I playfully flashed a peace sign. Then, the wedding ceremony began. In the solemn atmosphere, accompanied by the sound of the pipe organ, the bride and groom made their entrance. Linda, and her husband too, couldn't hold back their emotions, and tears flowed freely. I wondered if I had become a mother, would I have felt the same? I gently closed my eyes. Mom, let's sing together. My child, humming a hymn, said this. Where did you learn that? Surprised, I asked, and my child replied. You always sang it, didn't you, Mom? I could hear your voice even when I was in your belly. I love your voice, Mom. I love Mom's singing too. Could such a future have been mine? Suddenly, I felt a tear roll down my cheek. My husband gently held my hand. You might be nervous, but it'll be okay, Nancy. I love your singing. Encouraged by my husband, I smiled, nodded, and stood beside the pipe organ. I hoped everyone present, the bride and groom, and all the guests, would find happiness. I sang with all my soul. It's strange to say it myself, but after 20 years, my voice was clear and strong, and I believe the feelings in the lyrics, and my emotions, reached everyone. Linda, her husband, and even my parents cried listening to my song. It was then I realized, everyone had been quietly waiting for my song. I felt incredibly fortunate for the people around me. I was truly glad I sang today. And when the applause enveloped me after I finished singing, I felt refreshed, finally liberated from the past. Nancy, that was truly wonderful. I got goosebumps. I've never heard Nancy singing before. If I have a baby, I want to play Nancy's songs every day. As the wedding ended and we returned to the family room, Linda and the others rushed over. I was simply happy that everyone was pleased. It had been a long time since I'd felt this way. My husband stood by my side, supporting my shoulder, so I leaned on him gently. His warmth amplified the sense of accomplishment for having delivered my song to everyone, not the guilt I felt when I miscarried. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to sing in front of people, really. I was able to say goodbye to my painful past today. Hearing my words, my husband seemed on the verge of tears again. Why are you crying, Paul? Nancy, let's continue to overcome everything together as a couple. Always. I felt his grip tighten. Being said this in front of the day's stars, the bride and groom, felt somewhat embarrassing, and I playfully flashed a peace sign to hide my embarrassment. We want to be a couple like you, Nancy, even after decades. You'll have to share your secrets with us sometime." As we chatted warmly, the manager, Mr. Brown, approached. "Thank you so much, Nancy." "Oh no, I'm glad I could help in some way. Can I ask you something? Did you sing at a wedding venue about 20 years ago?" Yeah, I did a bit of part-time work when I was in college. I had worked at a wedding venue during my college days. Back then, the manager who discovered I specialized in opera took a liking to my singing and let me perform at several weddings. When Mr. Brown mentioned the name of the wedding venue where I had my part-time job, I was taken aback. It turns out my parents had their wedding there. Mr. Brown began with a nostalgic tone in his voice. He went on to say that both of his parents were remarrying. Mr. Brown was brought by his father and his sister by their mother. They married when he was in the first grade, and their ceremony was at the wedding venue where I worked part-time. Back then, even though he actually liked his mother and sister, he was too embarrassed to show kindness easily. He was also embarrassed about the wedding and had been stubbornly reluctant to attend until the last minute. But when I heard you singing the hymn at the venue, I somehow managed to open up. From that day on, I truly became part of a real family with my mom and sister. And your singing today was just like it was back then." Mr. Brown looked at me with shining eyes. I had no idea my singing had reached someone in such a way. "Thank you so much. I can't tell you how happy it makes me that my singing has lived on in your heart. Thank you." I realized my singing had reached people, even without my frantic efforts to gain recognition. After today, I felt ready to face life head-on. 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a call from Mr. Brown. "Hello, it's been a while. I have a favor to ask of you." He wanted to hire me as a choir for a wedding. Apparently, someone had posted my singing on social media, and there were multiple inquiries for me to sing. If there are people who want me to sing, then I definitely want to do it. I immediately agreed. The power of social media is incredible. Even the company that used to employ me as an opera singer reached out. So, the company I used to work for asked if I wanted to try opera again. I discussed it with my husband. "That's fantastic. What do you want to do, Nancy?" "I want to stand on stage again as an opera singer." My husband smiled and nodded repeatedly. "I support you, Nancy. Just remember not to overdo it." "Understood. Thanks, Paul." With my husband's encouragement, I started practicing again, dreaming of returning to the stage. 5 months later, my voice filled the theater. The audience's gaze was fixed on me, and I delivered a soulful song to their hearts. Over these 5 months, I did everything I could, from physical conditioning to vocal practice, to bring myself into the best shape possible. Looking at the audience, I saw people moved to tears by my singing. This was the scene I had always wanted to see. During the curtain call, I was so overwhelmed that I almost cried myself. The endless applause enveloped me, and I felt a happiness unlike any before. Glancing at the front row, I saw my husband, watching over me with a gentle gaze. The husband who silently stood by me during tough times. The husband who quietly watched over me until I recovered. And the husband who loved my singing and encouraged me to pursue it. Paul, thank you so much. My life, now shining brightly again, please continue to walk this path with me. I couldn't wait to share these feelings with my husband.